I'm so happy today to have Lynn Peterson from Metro here and Ben West from Clackamas County here today, joining me for a very special episode. And Kristen as well, of course,
Thanks,
co-hosting.
Andy.
Yeah. Welcome, guys. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Yeah. So happy to be here. Excited.
Cool. I just wanted to mention, obviously, I'm in a completely new space today. So if things are a little awkward, that's why. This is the first time I'm shooting in here. Kristen shot in here or recorded in here one time. So
Thanks to Thad Fisco from
yeah,
Portland Kettleworks.
Shout out to Thad for hooking this up. And we'll be doing some episodes in here. So, but
And
yeah.
shout out to Portland Water.
Yeah, shout out to Portland Water.
Volga
I mean, you'll
Water.
probably see an ad later, but yeah, they hooked us up with free water. And it's got the awesome Portland carpet on here, which everyone loves, right? You guys love the
Yeah,
Portland
because it's runways and it's transportation.
Oh, yeah, it ties in. It ties in, yeah. Definitely ties in.
If you haven't noticed, that is Lynn's thing. That is
Yeah.
her baby. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to get into introing you. Tell me about your role. Obviously, you're the president of Metro, which is like
Madam President to you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I was thinking earlier today.
We're on air now, Andy.
I was thinking earlier. I'm in regional government royalty because of both of you guys. So I'm
Wow.
very thankful for you guys coming.
We'll take it down a notch.
Yeah, no expectations.
Yeah, tell me about your role and I want your Metro explainer because I've had a lot of people on my show who know some things about it. Try to explain it. And then I also I was telling her on Mother's Day, I asked 5 women family members of mine if they knew what Metro was, and none of them. It was
Wow.
just
Yeah.
silence, like crickets.
Yeah.
So,
Did,
but
they didn't even say the transit agency?
no, it was just silent. And I said, the zoo, like they do that, and I had to explain it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, your role. How long you've been there, what Metro does, all that stuff, and just from your
Yeah,
perspective.
so Metro is the only elected regional government in the country, and we are required by law to have a metropolitan planning organization through the federal government, specifically through transportation, in order to disperse transportation dollars. 50-ish years ago, the feds said, time out. We're tired of all these little tiny cities spread across the entire United States coming and clamoring for dollars for transportation. So get yourselves organized. So every fairly large city or mega region, right, has to have a metropolitan planning organization. So we have that. That's part of our role. But then we actually were chartered through a ballot initiative to have a larger role than any other MPO across the nation. So we actually have teeth, and we have carrots and sticks.
Teeth, carrots, and sticks.
we
I
have-
like
yeah.
it.
And in the metropolitan planning role, we do transportation and land use because the Oregon Land Use Planning Program has actually acknowledged that we exist, and we manage the entire urban growth boundary.
Okay, I was just thinking,
Yeah.
so you interact with the urban growth boundary all the
Yeah.
time. And
So marrying up the transportation and land use has been this region's number one go-to, innovation of being on the forefront of saying, how do we actually serve people with better transportation, and how do we get better development for the people in the long run? Because the Oregon Land Use Planning Program was set up to make sure that we had large lot timber and farm, because that's where you get high production. So we saved that, but then we kind of sprawled within our urban growth boundary and said, we need to do this differently because this is very costly. The more we sprawl, the more costly it gets. So that's where we started to get into smart growth, what people call smart growth. So how do you marry up transportation and land use?
okay.
So that's one of our roles. Back when we were created, they actually married us up with a regional waste agency that was all by itself. So we actually manage the waste flow through the region. So your private company picks up your garbage, brings it to a transfer station. We have 2 of those transfer stations as Metro. And then it goes out to the Arlington landfill, which we manage the contract for. We also regulate, for public health reasons, that waste stream.
Okay.
So those are 2 big things. But then we also were gifted parks by Multnomah County when we were created. So suddenly we were in the parks. We became a parks organization. We were gifted, and I'm saying it very nicely. We were gifted these things,
Right.
and we have made, I would say, lemonade out of the lemons. So we had Blue Lake Park gifted to us, Oxbow, and Bybee Lakes
Okay.
from Multnomah County. They didn't want these large mega parks, so that we got parks, and now we have 20,000 acres of parks
Wow.
that we manage for habitat conservation, habitat restoration and conservation, and mostly along the Clackamas. And our largest part, Clackamas, the Tualatin, and the Sandy, and our largest parcel that we just bought was Eagle Creek Golf Course,
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
530 acres to restore clean air and clean water along the Clackamas River. Then we have all the venues in the region. So we have the Oregon Zoo, which you mentioned, the Convention Center, the Expo Center, which we're hoping to make into a sports mega complex so that we can keep families here in
That's
the region so we
right.
can come back to
I
that.
remember reading about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that. And then we took on affordable housing in 2018 with a bond measure, $652.8 million that has been allocated out, and more than 5,100 units have been built. We had promised 3,900. So about just over 5,100 have
Okay.
been built
Yeah.
or are in construction. And then the supportive housing service measure. So it's a real weird potpourri. It's not a local government, right? And it's not the state. We sit between the 3 counties
Mhm.
and the state. But we have to obviously work with all 24 cities and 3 counties to bring them together to actually, what I say, and then I'll stop and look at you to see the other perspective of this. When issues rise above boundaries, that's when Metro starts to get engaged. When it's so complicated that no one city and no one county can deal with it alone,
Mhm.
then we get engaged, or people ask us to come get engaged. And so the homeless issue is really obviously risen above any one county.
Right.
You can't solve it alone. And so that was the intent of the homeless service measure in 2019. I think we're only beginning to see the beginnings of that conversation that we can get into later. But 3 counties trying to work together, that's not easy.
Yeah. It's obviously an issue that all 3 counties struggle with and they're trying to figure out. And so it makes sense. I guess the regional government would
Yeah.
have a hand in that and try to.
And I feel we went
provide
through
guidance.
this. We went through this 40, 50 years ago when we created the urban growth boundary. There was a lot of angst
Mhm.
from every city and every county about, are you controlling our growth? Right. So there's an extreme amount of angst
Mhm.
Well, the
about
answer
where
is
that
yes, right?
Well, there's a 20-year land supply. So we can dicker about the assumptions behind, is there a 20-year land supply? Some people will say we have too much land. Some people will say you don't have enough land. So it depends on the assumptions behind it of like, what do you think the market will want and what the market will bear? There's a lot of assumptions in the modeling of what a 20-year land supply looks
What
like.
does that mean, 20-year land supply?
So if you've got, right now, if we were to, good thing I'm a modeler. I worked at Metro 25 years ago, transportation modeling and land use modeling. You look at how the land is zoned today to look at the density that you could get. And you say, all right, that's the number of units that we could possibly build out. And then you look at the market demand. What is the growth rate for the region? What is our birth rate? What is our death rate? And you figure out, okay, do we have enough homes?
Right.
Right. And
How long it'll take to fill up that land with
basically,
density.
yeah. What's the absorption rate?
Mhm.
And then you have to go in and you have to have the conversation with cities and counties. So we're going to move the urban growth boundary so that we can have more ability to accommodate the demand, or we're going to densify. So you're either growing out or you're growing up. And the combination of the two is where the dickering starts. How dense do you want to be and how much do you want to go out?
Right.
And usually we land somewhere in the middle.
Okay. I have a question about the urban growth boundary, but I'll come back to it because I wanted to
Yeah.
say welcome back to Ben. You've been on the show a while back.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Thanks
for having me back.
It was a lot of fun. I wanted to, first tell me about, because you have a new role with Metro. Is that right?
Yeah. Lynn tasked me to partner with her to co-chair this task force, the president's work group that she put together through Metro, to try to right the ship and to figure out how can we stop the systemic failures that we're seeing when trying to manage the homeless and housing the unhoused population and those struggling with behavioral issues or substance abuse or have some economic distress that are causing them to be in this predicament. And it was an honor for her to say, hey, Ben, help me out. I haven't been shy about this. I am a nurse and I'm a care provider, and I ran as a nurse from a nursing lens to be like, we're messing this up. We are not doing this right. We are not getting ahead of this crisis. And it caused me to want to run for a county commissioner role because counties are the public health arm. We're the boots on the ground when it comes to housing. Clackamas County has the oldest housing authority in the state. It dates back to the mid-19th century, just after we became a state, or just before, right around that territory statehood time frame.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
And that was the crisis that I was like, and the kind of was like spurred me to want to do more as a local elected. I wanted to solve this problem. I had these patients at the bedside. I was caring for them all night long. They'd be in drug-induced psychosis. They come in over and over again with no actual avenue for them to get healed and whole again. And so that's the lens in which I ran from and why I ran to be a county commissioner. Kristen, we've talked about this a number of times, just my heart drive for around
you
this.
came on when you were running.
Yeah. When I was running, I came onto your podcast, but like, I just feel like, I think Lynn has the same drive. I think that Lynn would also agree that we feel like we're called to care for these people effectively, and the status quo has failed at that. Mm-hmm. And Lynn and I have both been very publicly honest about where the shortfalls have happened, not just criticizing, but trying to be proactive with solutions, but being honest about to the voter, the bill trust, like, yeah, we messed up right here, or this entity within the region has really struggled. And so when she said, Ben, you have some outside ideas that are maybe different than the standard echo chamber, she was like, I need your voice here too. So we're co-chairing together. I have picked up a lot about the metro structure, regional government, the governance modeling, things that she has a stronger background, being much more experienced in local government than I am as a newer county commissioner. And then I bring this other side to it that's just not a voice being projected and amplified within the region either. Sometimes it feels like the only voices you hear are Portland and Multnomah County. Mm-hmm. They're also where most of the struggles have been, but there are, like I like to say, pockets of excellence in other parts of the region that can be modeled and duplicated. And so it's been a fun partnership. I think we've become relatively close as colleagues in this effort, and I really love working with Lynn. So, but that's the goal through supportive housing services and dealing with this crisis regionally, is how do we thread that needle? How do we build public trust again? And how are we going to be honest about what direction we need to go in and change and pivot? So that's how we got connected. And so I'm just co-chairing with Lynn on her task force.
I think it's great. Yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this show, you obviously know me and Kristen all the time talk about the problems in Multnomah County with homelessness. And in my opinion, it's, we've been on the wrong track for a long time. At least Multnomah County has. And I think it's important. What I would like to see from your guys' partnership is a overall kind of guiding light for all the counties with a successful model, because it seems like in Clackamas County you've had a lot of success.
We've had a lot of success, and we are still full steam ahead and trying to do better. And there's more people to help, but we took a different pathway. We took a different framework. We did a different worldview, and that had different outcomes than Multnomah County. And our structure, how we engage with this population, and the systems that we're building out, the infrastructure, how it's visionary and different and inspirational in many instances, and not even all of it's built out yet, but even just approaching it with the right value systems and viewpoint in a coordinated and balanced way has been a night and day difference in contrast to what's the struggles that Multnomah County has had. The struggle, I think that Lynn may agree with me on, is all the oxygen is being taken out of the room by the chronic and significant failures in Multnomah County, the kind that undermine the entire region, the kind that makes it to where we may lose everything that's good because one partner can't get up to speed and do the job correctly. And that's a challenge, right? Mm-hmm. The voters have every right to be upset when over $1 billion has been basically set on fire by Multnomah County, and it hasn't actually been effective in intervening and actually stemming the issue of homelessness in our community and mitigating it. So, but I think Washington County has some great successes too. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be partial to Clackamas County. I think objectively we've done the best in our systems. Now, it's funny is Clackamas County was projected by everybody to be on the struggle bus, was to struggle the most or to be the most oppositional. I just
Why?
Did people just have the idea that you were kind of caught flat-footed?
Well, we were the only county to vote no against it.
Oh, okay.
As a county.
I see.
We're the only county to say no to SHS. We are demographically the most moderate of both the counties. We also are the wealthiest by demographic because we have Lake Oswego, Westland, Wilsonville, some pretty Happy Valley, some pretty wealthy areas. We also have the largest rural population out of any county in the entire state. So we're kind of a weird
you get the urban inner area.
Yeah, it's like the urban and the rural kind of collide together.
We always say it's actually it is a micro Oregon. It is everything of Oregon in one county.
It's a bellwether county.
Yeah. Commissioner West is completely 100% accurate because when we set out, Clackamas was starting basically at ground zero. You had $8 million for the entire county.
Wow.
$8 million.
Like nothing. Which is nothing.
I know. And for us, Portland, Multnomah County,
right?
But of course,
infrastructure.
You came on after the SHS.
It had just passed, and I was like, and I took it by the bullhorn, and I was like, we're going to address this head on. Yeah,
you're at $24 million a year, just inside the urban growth boundary.
Just inside the urban growth
boundary. And so
the
$8 million you had, you put outside the urban growth boundary, and I thought that was amazing. And there was pushback at first because it wasn't supposed to supplant, but what it did is it allowed the rural area to get more services than they had ever seen at the same time, as well as the urban area. There was only one nonprofit that you were contracting with at the time, and that was domestic violence.
Yeah.
And now you have the vast services.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is interesting is we originally got a lot of flack. This was just before I was elected. If you remember right, things like no one's spending the money. They have all this money and they're not spending it. Oh my God, like when are we going to get people services? And there was a ton of pressure before Metro had the ability to figure out like, well, how much money do we have and where's it all coming from?
There's a new tax.
We're building up a new tax. And they're like, just spend it anyways and we'll figure it out on the go. And Clackamas County said, no,
time out.
We don't know if it's 24 million or 14 million. We have no idea. And so we got a ton of flack from certain service providers, special interest groups, politicians that were maybe a little ideologically different that wanted to point the finger really quickly. It turns out now that we're seeing the other two counties have significant budget shortfalls, our conservative approach to financial management early on has stabilized our money differently. And this tax is super volatile, and it stabilized our money. And we don't have we don't have a shortfall that we can't manage, or we've been prepared and we have built up those reserves to where now you have Jessica Vega Peterson announcing. By the way, it's more than 100 million, but that's a different deal. It's more like $140 million shortfall in our SHS alone. And you have shortfalls potentially that are more harsh for Washington County because we took a ton of pressure and heat, and we just were basically principled and said, we don't budget that way. This is public money pulled. That's now paying off a few years later.
So you took
it's part of the reform effort. I mean, this is one of the biggest pieces is that the stability of the program is the most important part in order to, if we're actually going to try and move people through on a recovery plan, right? And
it's got to be a sustainable
thing. And unless you're conservatively budgeting, you're going to be ripping services out from under people. But this is one of the things that we've learned is that Clackamas County led the way in terms of being conservative on a lot of these things, and it's paying off now in the end. But starting from scratch allowed you to build a program, which is different from Multnomah County. I mean, Washington County was essentially allowed to build a program. So Multnomah County started with distinct programs and hasn't built a system, and neither have we built a regional system so that we can depend on each other. And I think that's part of what we're trying to deal with right now, because every other city that people point to that say, hey, they've done a good job. Houston, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was born, all doing great jobs, but they have one city, one county. Right. We have 3 counties and 24 cities.
And not all had the same fentanyl crisis that we had either. I will say this. You're right in that we were able to build from scratch, and we had leaders that had the right framework and worldview to inform the policies. But I will say this. You had the exact same leaders pretty much that were supportive of insane policies like Measure 110, building out the system in Multnomah County and Portland. So the same people that participated in creating one of the worst policies ever in modern U.S. history around through the Drug Policy Alliance's influence, they're the exact same people we trusted to have the solution to solve the problem they created. And so you elected leadership that's pragmatic, moderate, and normal matters. It matters. And Lynn, you've been that way as a Metro president. I've tried to put aside some of my partisanship as it's not always easy for me, but as a local elected. But at the end of the day, like we were just saying before we got on this thing, like it isn't about teams, it's about solving local problems.
Right.
And I think that you saw the areas in the region that did that job that they were elected to do and didn't double down on bad ideas and ideology had different outcomes. And there were specific, and those people still today are not reflective on the policies that they made and being accountable for those outcomes. They're just not. And you see them continue sometimes to like have a hard time being honest about like where we've been.
From my background in transportation, and because I'm an engineer, what I have noticed this time around in elected, this last 6.5 years I've been in Metro versus my career as a transportation planner and engineer in the region and then in elected, this time around, we have lost a generation of people who understand compromise, negotiation, and risk management. And I don't know where we lost that, but it is playing out very, very much in Portland and Multnomah County. And I think in the suburbs, there's still staff and stakeholders that understand negotiation, compromise, sitting down, and I might not agree with you on everything, but we're going to work this situation out. Like it's going to happen. There's no question. I'm not going to delay. I'm not going to say I want the 100% of the perfect for me, but we definitely do have that problem in the core of our region, and it's been very difficult to manage through that conversation of if it's not 100% my way,
right,
then I want nothing.
I know.
Seriously, you want nothing.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's the I-5 bridge, or for me, on my wear my other hat, or it's on this issue. I think that's the hard part for me, just as a professional, as an elected official coming in this time. It's been an uphill battle for me to figure out this mindset and how do you still bring people together. And that's why Commissioner West was so important, is bringing that outside viewpoint in of, I might not agree with people in this room on 100% of the things, but we got to be solution oriented.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it is pretty wild because that's, I mean, that as somebody who lives in Multnomah County and Portland, I don't know if Kristen agrees, but that's like totally how I see it, as an inability to compromise, or even I was gonna say just that ability would be one thing, but you're saying risk management and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
that's a huge hurdle to get past. Even between the three counties, like that's just a lot to deal with.
When I was running Washington Department of Transportation, I had simultaneously the Columbia River crossing going on, the Seattle Tunnel project, and the 520 bridge, which is the longest floating bridge in the entire world.
Really?
I didn't know that. Wow.
All going at the same time.
Right.
And you learn risk management really quickly. Financial, technical, political, legal, like you are on the hot seat. And we've lost that muscle down here to understand that we can tackle big things and we can have nice things.
Right.
Yeah.
We have given up on wanting nice things. We think we're okay with the basics. And I'm struggling.
I don't know that we have the basics in Multnomah County.
That's what I'm saying. We're struggling just with the basics.
To get those, yeah.
But if you vision big, right, then this doesn't seem like a big hurdle. But there's a lot of perception of barriers that are actually doable, but seem insurmountable to folks who don't have the skills to be able to walk through the space. The skills?
Those perceived barriers.
I think some of it is, I think that's a really insightful question. I need to start thinking a little bit about that. Do you have any off the cuff?
Well, I think what the biggest barrier that I see is no one's going to bail Oregon out. And all of these chronic issues that we face statewide, from going into fire season, and everybody's already anxious about that. We're going to summer fire season and we watch our forests go ablaze, lack of forest management. The governor has already come out and said, make your properties defensible. I don't know what we're going to be able to do to help you. That doesn't like make citizens of Oregon feel Like, oh my God, like we're gonna
Gavin Newsom-esque.
Yeah, and so we have that, right? We have a lot of saber rattling from elected officials. We have a lot of theatrics in DC and locally, while we have really, really poor outcomes in those districts and those parts of the state. We have created the strictest land use in the nation locally, which does impact housing costs. I don't know if my son can buy a home here in the community he grew up in. That's a problem. That's a bipartisan problem. We should want our children to feel like they can live where they grew up and afford to be here. That's what we should want and should fight for. We have issues around an economic doom loop in the metro region, which is causing a loss of population and a loss of representation. I think that we are facing potentially losing our 6th congressional seat in 2030 because of the loss of population, loss of representation, loss of power, and inability to influence. And I think that we are not turned the corner yet on the homelessness and housing crisis that we also self-imposed.
No,
people
we have
also
not.
don't feel safe in their communities. TriMet is announcing that it is potentially stopping 2/3 of all of its buses because of its budget shortfall also. Never once again taking accountability for its own governing actions, and looking back and saying, how did we even get to this point? And also saying, blaming it on COVID, but not also saying, because we all went through this too, with all of our residents and voters went through this also. People don't feel safe. They don't feel safe riding mass transit anymore. Right. I used to take it single day to school from North Portland. My husband, Paul, used to take it every single day to the Pearl District to go to work. We had one car. We made it work. We were happy. Yeah. We went on all the fun little bike rides and we did all the fun, quirky Portland things when this was a different city. But now people aren't using it. Why? They don't feel safe. What policy outcomes locally with public safety did we create and allow that created the climate where we are lagging the rest of the nation in job growth, economic growth, environmental vitality, the ability for people to feel like they can buy a home and live here, to a crisis around fentanyl. I mean, we have an issue right now. This was just in the legislature. 9 Democrats crossed over on a bill to say, if you are here not legally and you are criminal, you are part of a criminal gang, we know you have criminal activity, a local jurisdiction may, not shall, may work with ICE to coordinate to have that criminal removed from our communities. 9 Democrats crossed over in the House to vote to potentially say, hey, we should give some local flexibility for law enforcement. But we have members of Congress flying to El Salvador, all while those criminal aliens are acting with impunity in the city of Portland at the Greyhound bus station, dealing fentanyl. And then we just have the largest fentanyl drug bust in U.S. history, and just blocks from our state capital.
Salem, yeah.
Right. So if you're looking like some of these problems are also self-induced. Now we can
I don't
debate.
think it was surprising to anybody.
No.
Yeah. And so and some of these things are controversial, and that's okay. But everything I said is true. But you asked the barriers. The barriers, we're not self-reflective to say, why? Why are we struggling? Can we have an honest debate without demonizing the other side, without pointing a finger?
Well, they'll say,
right?
I know what they'll say. I mean, the president or the chair of Multnomah County, Jessica Vega Peterson, would say it's just very complicated.
Is that what you?
Yeah, I mean, that's
so
what. Yes.
The biggest barrier to housing, to homelessness, is not just we talked about this, not just the recovery road, but it's part of the housing crisis.
Yeah.
And so that's why this reform effort we're leading is looking at housing and homelessness and making sure that the homelessness is about the services to recovery, right?
And the housing needs the services, right?
Yeah. And when I say barriers, now that you've given me a little time to think about it, I just keep going back to the fact that we were created and we have become a very anti-growth state.
Yeah.
And
since McCall.
No, before that, even when we were actually formed as a state, we were not
not friendly.
We were not welcoming.
Visit and go away.
That's
was
right.
her motto.
Right. I mean, but
Yeah.
but Tom McCall knew how to reflect the actual feelings and the values of Oregonians really well, and how to convey that. So his visit, but don't stay, was a reflection of ourselves
Yeah, it's true.
And we're also very anti-corporation.
Mhm.
And 80% of Oregonians, well, 80% of our businesses are small businesses. So they're us. They are Oregonians. They are not, from out of state. They are not
Nike.
Yeah. The vast majority of us, and we have to somehow come to terms with
Even though
that.
Nike is an Oregon company.
It
I
is,
just
but
want to
then
make
there's
sure everybody
Intel,
knows that. I'm very
right,
proud of Nike.
or-
I'm very proud of our big
We
business.
should be proud that
I'm not ashamed of it.
we should be proud of that. But when you look to the north with Seattle and the number of Fortune 500 companies, you look to our
we don't have any.
sister
Yeah.
city, mega region, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they have 17, 18, 19, depending on the year, Fortune 500 companies. And in Seattle and in Minneapolis, they get together on a monthly basis to better their home.
Hmm.
We don't have that, and we haven't figured out how to get to that
That's right.
conversation.
You're saying the businesses
The
get together?
Fortune 500 companies come together.
big-
Well, I think
one.
that's the idea of the Metro Chamber.
No, that is
I don't think they're that big.
no, it's not. They're not. A chamber is not the same as what I'm talking about. The Fortune 500 companies, when you have enough of them, they're actually competing for and attracting and retaining
Yes.
Workers.
talent.
Yes.
They want talent. So you have to have a really good education system. You have to have a beautiful place to live. You have to have a great environment. You have to have arts and culture.
Mhm.
You have to have these pieces of the puzzle.
All this stuff for like, hey, we have 5,000 employees.
And when we push corporations away and we don't bring them in to
Right.
say, we need help making this a better place because we do want to grow.
Yeah.
We have to find, how do you grow with Oregon values? That's my biggest question to everybody.
Yeah.
Is, we talk a lot about B Corps, right? Because we're a socially mission driven state,
Right.
right? Everybody you
Yeah.
It's
talk
like,
to.
I think New Seasons is a B Corp. But yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are so many of them.
For people who don't know, what is that?
A B Corp is a company who says, I will set aside, is it 10%?
A
Something like
certain amount for a
10%
charitable
of
cause, I think. Yeah.
10% of the net profit to a charitable cause. City of Roses is a B Corp. That idea of socially mission driven actually marries very well with Oregon values. We have the most number of nonprofits per capita in the country because everybody has their socially mission driven
Right.
thing that they're working on. And there's a lot of overlap between them, which is its own issue. But if we could create an O Corp, I would be the happiest girl on the planet. If we could give tax incentives to bring companies
Yeah.
to Oregon that have our values, that are like timber frame companies, or more of the growing the universe of high tech off of
Mhm.
Tektronix and Intel.
Silicon Forest.
Microchips.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of these things we would be putting our money where our mouth is. And right now we don't.
What
Right.
values would you want them to have?
I think Oregonian values, right, are come to this place but value this place. Don't destroy this place for private gain. That is essentially what you will hear out of most Oregonians is, we value this place so much. We love companies that value
The irony
this
is
place.
we're destroying it.
Yeah.
We're keeping them out
Yeah.
and we're destroying it.
Because we haven't
Yeah.
figured out over all of these years the balance of what a good corporate citizen actually looks like. We haven't recognized that. We haven't celebrated that. That's where the chamber actually does a good job. When you look at a lot of their folks on their executive board, those are the people who are actually serving their community.
Yes,
They are the
that's
ones
right.
with the B Corps. But we are not celebrating them in the way that we should. And even with the work that's going on in Nike right now, bringing back the new president back into Nike, who is celebrated internally in Nike and should be celebrated outside because he actually moved into Portland when he came back.
Which is amazing.
He moved into the Pearl because he cares about this place. And I wish we
the
could have a whole
Multnomah
conversation
County
with
should
him.
be falling at his feet.
It's a little tough because we want to do that. We want to recruit these job creators, people that are innovative, people that have similar value systems, people that want to invest in Oregon because they love Oregon and who we are as Oregonians and our history and our value system. And we have some very uniquely Oregon kind of vibes and things that we're all really proud of. Like you've been an Oregonian You were born here. How many
No,
generations?
I was born in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee,
Raised in Madison.
Wisconsin.
Not to tout my
He
own.
has a book,
Not
Ben.
not to toot my own
She
horn,
has
but
a
I'm
book.
6th generation Oregonian.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Go for it.
But you're such an Oregonian now. I would have just
Yeah.
assumed that you were here since the
I
Oregon
have totally
Trail.
absorbed
Yeah,
that.
your ancestors on the wagons were on their
Well,
way
there
over.
is a Wisconsin-Minnesota
Yeah.
like thing going on between. Yeah.
I was born here, but I'm a Green Bay fan, so we're kind of
Okay. There we go.
But who wants to do any of that investing in anything that we are when we told them like, it's more tent cities, it's more fentanyl, it's more in like taxes that are punitive that drive out job creation. It's more let's be the first to pass the most extreme policy in the nation. That's like our new thing that we're good at is, no one's ever done this before.
You're talking about decriminalizing hard drugs?
There's many times that
Yeah.
Oregon has been the first of
It's
everything
true.
controversial,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes maybe we should just be a little more measured and pragmatic in our approach. And my thing now that I keep saying over and over again, I think Oregon rebounds quickly if it just finds some balance.
Yeah.
I mean, you look outside of your window, and at least my office window, and all I see is this majestic Mount Hood.
Yeah.
You hit this May weather that we're like, yeah, I'm not traveling. I'm like in spite of all these issues, like you're also like, and almost the beauty of Oregon and the riches of its bounty almost numb all this stuff we're talking about. Because if we decide to like do the work and right the ship, there's very few places in the world that's with a temperate climate that people would want to live.
Mhm.
And it's almost like, I know a lot of people have left to other states. We've almost had like a reverse migration of Oregonians once upon a time.
Yeah, we have.
It was the Oregon Trail. Everybody wanted to come to the land of promise and honey and overflowing with great opportunity. It was the Oregon Trail, right? It was, they made a video game about us. It's in everyone's school books. Lewis and Clark. Let's go to the promised land of the Northwest. Now we see, we have the gold pioneer on top of the state capitol, and it's almost like he's watching a reverse migration out of our state. What did we do generations later that now they're going to Idaho, Clark County, just across the river? Why are they going to Tennessee, Texas, and Florida? I think we're a much more beautiful state. I think environmentally much more livable state. I love being an Oregonian. I'm an Oregonian. I'm not a Texan. I'm not a Floridian. I'm not even a Washingtonian across the river. I'm an Oregonian. So what have we done? And I so think we need to be honest about, we got to put some of our sacred, we got to push away the sacred cows and our pet projects and our things. And we have to get down maybe that local government mentality where we just solve local problems. And so we got to stop the reverse migration. But that starts with just being honest about where we're at.
Where are we at?
Well, we've gone through this before.
I hope rock bottom.
I mean, I think Multnomah County can show you pretty quickly there may be no bottom. I mean, that's one of the biggest questions that people have asked me, well, after what is Metro? And I didn't know what that was when I told them that you all were coming on, is what, if any, control does Metro have over the supportive housing services tax money? And how are you holding Multnomah County accountable for that money?
So
Great question.
It's a very good question.
Great question.
And it's a difficult one because I wish I had a better answer. We're trying to reform it so that I can actually have a better answer for you. But
we're working on it right now.
What I will tell you is that I was voluntold to put this on the ballot.
What does that mean?
It means that there was a significant amount of political interest and money that wanted to put this on the ballot. And they were going to put it on the ballot whether or not Metro Council did. They were going to gather signatures, and they had the money to go gather the signatures and put it on the ballot. So we grabbed it so that we could at least put some authority into it, but we had 3 weeks to get it to the ballot.
Who was behind the ballot measure? Do we know what groups were drafted the ballot measure, funded the ballot measure? Do we know anything about that?
I don't want to get into names, but it is...
Or what the intent was, I guess.
The intent was to create a regional... I mean, it was a good intent to create a regional homeless service measure because there wasn't enough money.
Supportive services that go along with housing.
Yeah. So that we had the affordable housing bond measure, which we've totally kicked ass on.
You said, 5,100
Yeah.
units.
I mean, that's a tenth of what we actually need in the region, but it's a good start.
I know from the numbers I am used to hearing, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And it means that as we progress people through from chronic homelessness through the shelter system and hopefully out, there are places for them to go in the future as these things build out. but they're still not enough. Like, we can't meet the actual demand. However, the supportive housing service was to do that. It was supposed to be prevention to keep you from falling into homelessness with eviction prevention so that you can pay your rent and not get kicked out, because now that's more expensive the minute you get kicked out for us to be able to help move you back into an apartment. And then to be able to get you off the street. Those were the two main goals. When we wrote that up in 3 weeks to get it on the ballot, we tried to get enough oversight and we tried to get enough definition. But what we failed to do is really clearly define roles and responsibilities and measures of success. So that's where I feel like the cleanup is in terms of reforming this and giving back to Metro a funder role and not a bank. So that the initial basically ask was, we just want you to be a bank. And we said, no, if it's flowing through us and we're responsible for the outcomes, then we need a little bit more authority. So we have a small amount of authority to say,
well, it's like banks, when they lend money, they have
yeah,
requirements and
right. But we never got those requirements in there.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
We never made that clear about what those requirements were. And the way it works right now is that the 3 counties create an implementation plan, an annual plan.
Okay.
But they've already gotten the money.
I see.
Yeah.
And then the plan comes forward and the plan is approved. We want to move that,
Reverse that.
it, so that the new governance structure will actually agree to the implementation plan, and then it gets funded.
Which would make sense, right?
Right. The other big issue, and it's like the basis for everything, is that it literally took 4 years to get a data sharing agreement. And again, it stems from a paranoia of, how are you going to use my data? How are you going to use that data against me? Because,
well, aren't you tasked with doing that in the ballot measure?
yes, but what I look at it as, how do we get the data? Because I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
How do we get the data to start tracking towards measures of success, and then being able to say, what lessons have we learned? What are we seeing in these trends? We can't trend line anything.
I mean, they don't want to be held accountable. That's when I hear, I don't want you to see my data because I don't want you to use it against me. It's like, well, there's nothing to use it against you. There's nothing to say if you're doing well.
That's right. That's right. And that entrenchment was not coming from the suburban counties as much as it was from Multnomah County.
Clackamas.
But we've gotten over that hurdle, and all 3 counties have signed on to the data sharing agreement.
Thank goodness.
Yes, and data is starting to flow, but it's a minimum of data that's required by the federal government. It's not necessarily the data that Commissioner West and I or any of you would want to see.
Is that the kind of HUD level?
Yeah,
required
HUD and I guess HUD.
Yeah, it's HUD. It's for federal funds, and
Right.
yeah.
Does the ballot measure require a forensic audit of the county, of each county?
So it requires audits, and our auditor is a separately elected at the metro level.
Yep.
And each county either has an elected auditor, or at Clackamas County, it's appointed by the treasurer. Multnomah County has had audits from the Multnomah County auditor, at least one, and they're working on another one. Washington County has not, and you've asked for one because you have not.
So you're saying they can comply internally. It's not an audit performed by, it doesn't need to be an audit performed by Metro. They can audit themselves.
We have an auditor, and he's performed at least 2, and he talked about those 2 at our meeting just last night. What they're looking for is the effectiveness of the money spent.
Right. I think that's what we're all looking for as taxpayers.
Yeah. And very narrow scopes, like they have to take on a very narrow scope. So I think what Commissioner West and I have landed on is we'd like to talk about something that has as much teeth as an assessment, as an audit. But there's a very clear difference between an audit and the auditors legally, and what we can do. So we're talking about, how do you do an annual system evaluation and assessment so that we know whether we're making progress
over the region, not just hodgepodge, each little
so you don't have
organization entity
patchwork.
doing on its own patchwork.
Yeah.
And and having like 5 different audits.
So
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
instance, if you have a client at Clackamas County, you want to know that no matter how they entered the system,
Yep.
they are automatically eligible for whatever services that they need so that they can move their way through a recovery process, right?
Yep.
That is not happening in each county, and it's not happening between counties. So in other words, Commissioner West has a really great idea of specializing in Clackamas County and allowing the other counties to access that specialty. We are not at that point yet where we could regionalize the system because we haven't even created a system within each county fully.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
No, I came when we were doing this task force. I wrote up and came out with a full entire system care continuum that was inspirational and also covered things that we are doing. It was based a lot on what we are doing in Clackamas County and then expanding on that. Commissioner Singleton came out with her own kind of version from Multnomah County. They were different. I think there was some congruency, but they were different. You could see like where the different almost ideological influences were from. Mm-hmm.
I guess she would say the same for you.
But we've been in conversation, Commissioner Singleton, we've been in conversation, it's been positive. So we're trying to build those bridges and figure out how to make the entire system work. But what we do need to be able to take a regional look at this. And then, if Portland fails, the whole state and the entire region of the Northwest is not doing good. It's not just an Oregon thing, right? Seattle suffers, Idaho suffers. I think it's pretty.
Nobody has solved this.
Honestly, Kristen always says that Multnomah County is like kind of the most important to the whole state. Like it has the most power in the state.
I think the Multnomah County chair is the most important political office in the entire state.
Yeah, I would agree. So what Lynn and I are trying to do is like, what is that regional approach that makes sense, that's common sense driven, that helps people get through recovery? And then if one portion of the region is really struggling, if one portion of the region can't meet necessary outcomes, how does the other part of the region, Metro and the other 2 big counties, pivot to take on the responsibility to get this entity up to speed? You're almost putting them on a performance improvement plan in a way. Like, how do we get your performance up to speed? And then how do these other 2 counties that have the capacity or the competency to manage those services so people still get what they need and to get in there and to keep things moving forward? But how do we have accountability, real accountability?
How do you?
Like, you don't get your SHS funding anymore. We're going to shift it over here and we're going to work on your system.
So can you turn that off today if you wanted to?
So yes, the Metro Council could.
Everybody listening right now is screaming about why you're not doing that.
If we were to turn the spigot off, those people would be on the street.
It
is the worst case conversation for me to have.
So who are they housing in Multnomah County?
What we're talking about is trying to figure out what would an elevated compliance scheme look like, because you should get a warning.
Right.
You should have a performance plan, and we have already in there a corrective action plan, but
who's on the street? How many people is Multnomah County helping with the SHS money?
So that's a hard question to answer. Their point in time count, remember, just showed that they had 14,000 and they thought they had 11,000 people on the street. Right. All of their money combined is helping them, the federal, the state. What we know is SHS is more than half of their money at this point. So,
but I mean, are they doing things for people? Because that's unclear to me.
There is some positives out of Multnomah County. Not all of it is negative. Yeah.
Let me. I want to put an optimistic moment in here, because I do believe that the right people are at the table now. I do believe that
who's at the table.
So Commissioner Singleton and Commissioner Brim Edwards. But the 4 county commissioners are doing a bang-up job working together and being very outward about the challenges that they face. And I think that's the first step to recovery in every sense of the word, is being able to say out loud, we have more to do, right? So we have, the program has moved. We're at 7,500 people off the street. And there have been 15,000 or more eviction preventions.
This is in Multnomah County?
Yeah.
This is the entire system.
The entire system?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
that's-
hard to know what the Multnomah County numbers are.
I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay.
Probably
But
a large portion. Of
it's a
that.
very large portion of that.
How do you manage the landlord issue? Because if there are restrictions
don't.
on...
That's not my lane. Do you?
No.
How do we get people
We-
to participate in that system?
So here's where I think like we're trying to do it in Clackamas. Right now, the status quo has been we either going to put you on shelter and then from shelter directly into permanent supportive housing. Now, permanent supportive housing could mean like your own apartment
Sure.
with
Anything.
like
mean
an
anything.
actual like your own like unit. Not everybody is ready for that.
Right.
And we have to have housing that is tailored to where the individual is, that's transitional. And then we can't just continue to do the most expensive thing, which is shelter, in and out of shelter, in and out of shelter.
Endless cycle.
That is not working either. So how do we build out a balanced, coordinated housing system that has lots of supports that are appropriate depending on what kind of housing? Maybe housing part in Clackamas County would mean this is actually goes to detox. Then you're going to get medical housing supports that has medical stabilization tied to your housing.
How do you
that you're getting
incentivize
actual
people
care.
into that?
So it's this. We have to do it with what state law will allow us to do. We
Yeah,
can't force.
which is
Some of it's
tough.
self-directed.
Mhm.
But in Clackamas County, the way we do it is that we have our award-winning coordinated housing access system. It's called CHAW. We just received an award from the National
your acronym.
Thank you. We just received an award from the National Association of Counties, the only county in Oregon to get this award. And what we do is that we have a very targeted, person-centered approach that we know who you are, where you are, and why you're homeless. We basically chart you like a medical
Wow.
chart. We know why you're homeless. We know what if you have a
So you're
disabling
actually
factor.
collecting data.
We collect all. We know your name. We know your pet's name. We know where you like to sleep at night. We know, and we're engaged so much that when you're ready to maybe say, I think I might be ready for some change. I don't want to be cold anymore. We're on it. And if you call our CHAW system, same day you get a call back if you get a voicemail. We know this doesn't linger. You don't fall through the cracks. And it has been incredibly effective beyond even a point in time count about us knowing who in our community is struggling.
Because point in time is obviously self-reported.
important to
and
know
It's every 2 years. It's one night in January.
Everybody agrees it's not reliable.
an approximation.
Right. It's like a poll.
And this is why it's an optimistic moment that Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards has been asking for and finally got the by name count from
Right.
Multnomah
That's
County.
right.
Yeah.
So it's not anonymous. Like now they can start to follow people and
Figure out what they actually need.
I was going to say,
right.
by this point,
Sharon
our
Myron talked
Sharon
about that.
episode will probably be out because that was her thing. It was like, first step is we need a by name list. Like, and,
Totally right.
and I've heard of this ask for years, and I'm like, in my opinion, Multnomah County's been sitting on their hands for like 4 years not doing that. But it does seem like the very first step you need to do, and then you can make a connection with each person to figure out their needs and kind of go
And
from
we can
there.
assess, okay, this person clearly is not ready for permanent supportive housing, but we can shelter them.
Right.
Okay, now we're still going to be in your business. Okay, now we're going to go to the next. Okay, you're stabilizing, you're doing better. We're going to handhold you and walk you over to more stabilized temporary housing respite situation. Okay, now we want to get you connected. Okay, we want to get you connected up here. Okay, now the third or fifth option down the road is permanent supportive housing. Right? It's not housing first, which is mostly permanent supportive housing, and we'll kind of figure out services, but everybody just deserves a home. We are person, patient, tailored, and person-centered. We're patient-centered, and we're going to be able to have a flexible enough system no matter where you're at within your needs. We can capture you and help you where you're at and grow from that point forward. And it's very much recovery treatment focused instead of just permanent supportive housing. Now, we all support housing. We all need more housing. We need all kinds of housing. Yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah.
But we did all of that. So what we did in Oregon was, yay, it's like Pinocchio's Pleasure Island. We're going to turn on the faucets and everyone gets fentanyl. You get fentanyl and you get fentanyl. It was like Oprah was just throwing fentanyl into the streets. But usually it was some type of like criminal activity that got in our streets, but whatever. So we just like turned on the spigot, right, of like illicit substances. And then we said, oh, well, these people all deserve an apartment. What? No, that person is like in a drug-induced psychosis. They're
Well, that's why we
they're
can't
naked
get
in the
insurance
streets,
for ours
right?
anymore in Multnomah
You
County.
Those are
know,
Those are the two things that I always, because the insurance thing was new to me. I learned that a couple months ago, but
and they're dying indoors.
that and they're dying. Those are the two things that I
Right.
always tell people.
Yeah, but that person didn't have a coordinated, tailored system
Right.
that
Right.
could take them in that state,
Right.
stabilize, and hopefully work down to be successful in permanent supportive housing.
So no matter
Which-
who it is and what stage they're at, you're always making progress.
And
no
I'm,
matter
I'm
what.
trying to remember Jim Franciscone's group that just came out with that report that we had
Oh
in
yeah,
front of the
yeah,
group.
yeah.
That basically
Yes.
MCI is the company that did it. Is that right? Or HCI?
Yeah.
We'll get you the name so you can put it on
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
they just came out with an annual report that
Robust study.
former city council commissioner Jim Franciscone is leading this group. And it basically says Oregon, Portland, the region adopted a housing first model. It's been shown to work in other places, but we're actually not doing it.
Right.
And I think that's
Yeah.
the single biggest
Because the model is
takeaway.
what?
It means that while we're getting people in shelter, or we're getting them temporary shelter, or we're getting them a roof, but we're not getting them the services that they
Right.
need. And that is a federal problem. That's a state
That's right.
problem,
That's
and
right.
and a local problem, because there's not enough mental health beds, right, in the
Right.
region. Those are temporary mental health beds. The actual mental health hospital is in Bend.
Yeah, and housing first originated in its infancy before the federal government picked it up in the 90s in New York, and it was completely wrapped around with robust services and interventions.
Yeah.
It was very intertwined together.
Mhm.
Then the federal government got it under George W. and Obama, and they said, "Hey, you have to offer housing, and you cannot require services. You can't. You can offer them, but no way can your housing be tied to supportive services for success measures." And so what happened? All the federal money was tied to housing, while ignoring also the human element
Right.
of substance abuse, behavioral health issues, economics, all these other things that can be actual causations. So it was policy driven under two different administrations from both parties. It really did blow up under the Obama administration. And so now we can look back in all these years and be like, well, we know we can agree housing is important, but that didn't work. Like, look, the problem has exploded since we pushed those policies
But
forward.
they seem to be doing something right elsewhere. Like New York does shelter their homeless. Try to set up a tent in Times Square and let me know how long that lasts.
They have a right to housing act in the state, correct? It's
I
the
don't
state.
know. I don't know how they're
Yeah,
structured.
they
But
have
the point is
a
people
right to
use it.
housing, and so they have to have enough beds
Yeah.
for anybody. And basically, that's what we're trying to get to without having a right to housing. Is we've been trying to get at least enough shelter beds that if you choose to come off the street, you have a place to go. That's why we actually supported at Metro Mayor Wilson's initiative
Mhm.
for overnight shelters,
Mhm.
because
Sure.
through all of his research, right, this was the piece that was missing, because we went to 24/7 shelters,
So expensive.
and we were missing that piece of like grabbing people for that night and
Yeah.
getting their name and knowing who they are, so that at least we can start tracking and having a conversation to bring them in.
Totally right.
Right.
Right,
Make
and-
that transition. Yeah.
And
And
that's
interact
why-
with them.
And that's why he said, and this is a really important point, is that it's a 2-year endeavor.
Yeah. It
it's-
takes a long time. Yeah.
Well, it's a 2-year endeavor. And his point is, if we can get a hold of individuals that are still out on the street with an overnight shelter, then we can move more people through the system. We just have to figure out how to have the capacity to take those folks. But we put $15 million in out of the $28 million that he
Mhm.
needed for the
Mhm.
2-year program. And now they're looking for the state to put the rest in. And I hope that comes to be, because this is a really important step in kind of breaking down some of the status quo assumptions.
So you bypassed the county and gave it directly to the mayor of Portland.
We were looking at bypassing the county, because the county chair had said she would not give that money to the mayor. But the 4 county commissioners actually passed a resolution
Okay.
that all 5 of them then passed, that if Metro were to give the county the money, they
She
would
got
pass it on to
forced.
the mayor.
Oh, right.
She got
Yeah.
forced.
Yeah.
I mean, great.
Yeah, to do it.
So is the support of her housing services tax going to increase?
So right now, there's 2 things that we're doing. We're reforming it so that we can get more accountability, more compliance if there is a problem, more data, and more measures of success, so we can tell you whether we're doing well in this area or doing not so well and what we're going to do, right? Trying to systemize this program. So there's a reform effort underway. There's also a discussion about an extension because it's a 10-year measure. We're in year 5. And basically, if we don't talk about an extension, we have to start asking the counties for their wind down plans. The providers have already told me we can't accept any more clients if we know that we have a 5-year runway down, because it will take all of the money in the system to get the folks that we have through. So if we don't talk about an extension,
So yeah,
they won't be investing in any more people.
At that point, you're not talking about influx at all. You're
right. So the question about an extension has been on the table, that both Here Together, the nonprofit that was created to push this initially, and Portland Metro Chamber have a tentative agreement on a tax cut with an extension. And that's what we've been starting to shop around to folks on the elected side, and also what the polling is going to show. Because from past polling, we know that we have support for the program, but it's waning. We know that people want reform and they want accountability, and they want results, and they want less tents on the street. Right? That's the bottom line. Yep. And so how do we get that? And that's what we're talking about now. How do we prioritize getting those folks off the street immediately as quickly as possible and making that the clear objective?
This debate going on about like the new structure moving forward is very interesting, and it's super important that people are paying attention to it. And Metro is leading that conversation right now and convening it.
Is that through the task force that you all
Yes, this is a lot of what we're
on?
talking about. Yep. And more conversation to move forward. Some of this Metro can just do on their own with governance and whatnot. Some of this has to go back before the voters. Some of this is Lynn and I spend a lot of times like, how do we get voter trust? We're asking for something huge. And
I think it's much easier for you.
Yeah, and damn it, they don't.
In your county.
Well, my county turned it down initially, right? And we're all tainted by Multnomah County's performance.
It's true.
So, and so Lynn and I are just like, oh my God, you're like, how do we get this to stabilize? How do we get this to work? The voters are mad, rightfully so. They were told in 10 years, we're going to get all this money. We're going to solve it. And then it's like year 5 and they're like, Multnomah County's worse. It's not getting any better. The numbers are we're not getting good reports.
It's like the report that came out this year. Yeah.
It's just like total
increase.
Deflating. Like we felt it. We were like, okay, can we get a break? Can we get a break? Because we're because not everywhere is like that. And I think, there's some policy disagreements on like, if we should have a rate cut, how does that impact at the local level on systems that are working? If there's an extension,
think, Ben, there would be public support for you. There needs to be an understanding of who exactly is going to be on the street from Multnomah County. And let's see. And maybe we can take care of them in other ways. There can be negotiations about that. But if you turn off the spigot there, I think you can get buy-in from Washington, Clackamas, other places that are doing it.
If we hold immediate accountability, so strong accountability to Multnomah County
People
now.
are dying for Multnomah. They're literally dying on the street right now, probably behind this building.
Totally.
How long is this going to take?
So you're saying
all we do is pour money into it. I live in Multnomah County, so I'm uniquely frustrated.
And your business and your life has been dramatically
my business
impacted.
You've basically
been impacted.
gone.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly where I was is I'm not going to be there anymore. I mean, I'm not going to work downtown anymore.
Yeah.
Chris is saying, I think, to invoke the nuclear option, which you were describing earlier. But I don't know if I'd agree with that, but I mean,
so invoke it.
What would you do?
I mean, I don't.
Invoke the
I'm
nuclear
not running
option
for
while
city
asking.
council.
Wait. Let me clarify. You're saying invoke we'll call it the nuclear option, I guess is what we're calling it. We've never said that, but
It's
we're saying
nuclear. I mean,
so
I don't know that it's
maximum
not nuclear.
accountability to the failing county, while also showing that accountability and while asking for the extension, while asking for more time, while asking for
I don't know about that latter part.
I'm just like, you guys have the pulse, like you're in the community, you're both very like normal people, you speak to all kinds of electeds and people. So I'm curious, like I'm just asking as like somebody that's working with Lynn on this. Maximum accountability if we have to ask for more time or more grace to get the job done. back to the voters. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what people need to see.
And
At least
What do you think?
as a resident, as a business owner in Multnomah County, I can't imagine throwing more money down that sinkhole.
I think what I've heard from the business community, I think what I've heard from Multnomah County residents is please just prioritize what you said you would prioritize, which is getting the tents off the street, getting these people off the street.
But the county is handing out the tents.
And the mayor is working with the chair right now and not doing that anymore. But
She's not going to be with him on that, but sure.
I know he has been vocal about,
he's been
not
very
happy with the tent handout.
No.
Stuff, yeah.
I think the point is getting the people off the street, right, that are living in the tents. But I think there are ways in which we can get very close to what you're saying without removing the money, but saying the money has to be spent this way.
I don't know if this is realistic, but what I would propose maybe is a conditional thing of like, hey, if you get this by name list going in any sort of physical like fashion, then we can turn the spigot a little bit.
You want to increase
so
it?
The spigot, this is what would have to happen because to just cold turkey shut it off would be catastrophic. It isn't real,
and
right?
I get it. Yeah.
But,
in what way do we know?
Oh yes,
though?
yes, we do know that it would be much worse if we just immediately said cold turkey, it's cut off.
In what
right?
way?
So all the folks that are in the 24/7 shelters, and there's 2,500 beds right now.
2,500 additional, boom, back on the street.
25 in Multnomah County.
Yeah. And they do have
And
some.
that's
funded region wide
via the SHS
There's more
tax.
beds than that, but that's what's being funded by supportive housing services. So if we just turned off the spigot
by just the SHS tax,
you would lose 2,500 beds almost to meet
overnight.
Yep.
And there's other things that would be impacted negatively.
So
it would
why
ripple
couldn't
effect
we
in
say,
many
why
ways.
can't we figure out how much they're spending on that and give them just that and say this is for that?
But I think the question is prioritization.
Yes.
I think that what we need to start thinking about is there are phases to this program, and how are you going to move through these different phases? I think Clackamas and Washington were very quick to move through what I would call a phase one of getting everybody acknowledged and off as many off the street as they can.
Yep.
And then the question is when can you move to phase two and do prevention?
Yep.
Because we haven't prioritized. It's been a twofold thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is a risky situation to also not prevent.
Right.
And I will acknowledge that out loud. But we also have said that 75% of the funds would go to getting
75%
of the funds would go to getting people off the street. And that's not where Multnomah County is. I believe it's 55.
Yeah, they're underperforming on that. The thing is what you could do, and what we're talking about is not turning off the spigot, but once again, redirecting funds to competent agencies within the region to kind of hold serve, to evaluate, to make sure that everything doesn't turn back.
That's working.
Well,
Why wouldn't you just
but who
leave
would
that?
manage that? It would have to be the other two counties and Metro together, while removing Multnomah County from being able to manage those funds. Does that make sense? So you would still have to. You couldn't
Good.
turn. I'm just saying you couldn't turn the spigot off. You'd have to have competent counties step in regionally to manage
But
it.
they don't need the whole spigot. They're not using it. They're not using it.
They are now. they have fully
On what?
they have fully allocated
Recently, they've fully allocated the funding they have.
They
But
have
on
fully
what?
allocated it on the two things that they are supposed to be doing, which is the preventative, the eviction prevention, the
It's like rent assistance,
vouchers,
and that type of stuff,
type of thing, and then on moving folks off the street. They are using the funds. They are fully allocated out. It took 4 or 5 years to get there.
Yeah.
But it took all of the counties that long to build up a program. So they are fully there now. The reason the Multnomah County actually spent more is that they used some of that carryover money that you're talking about.
One-time funding they weren't supposed to use that way.
Yeah.
They used one-time only money that should have been used on like buying a building. They used it on programs.
Instead of capital.
I was going to bring that up earlier on how you're talking about how Clackamas had the sustainable, and you were very surgical and conservative with your finances to make that sustainable. Because that's what I just immediately thought of was so much of what Multnomah County did with homelessness and the joint office was one-time funding. And they, I would assume, knew that. And that just seems like a horrible decision.
Yeah. So we kind of visioned out from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Like we have coming, and we were conservative enough with our funding. We now have enough significant seed money to build a recovery campus.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of modeled after New Haven for Hope out of San Antonio. Dr. Marbut founded New Haven for Hope. And that multi-acreage campus is going to be a significant asset to help this population. It may be so robust it can even help other regions once we get it off the ground. And it's inspirational, and it's like recovery focused, and it's not seen in the region at all or in the area. It's so different. It's been an honor to spearhead that and to be a champion for it since the day I got elected. Martha Schrader and Commissioner Schrader and I went to San Antonio. We walked into New Haven for Hope. They gave us the whole tour, and our eyes were like this. It was like, oh my God, we can do this. We got to do this. And so we've been championing that effort. Metro's been supportive. Lynn's been supportive, right? So, but we have the seed money. We're the only county that right now in its general fund budget and in SHS, that in our general fund budget, we're in the black. And in our SHS budget, we have a little bit less revenue coming in this cycle, but we're okay because we've managed our money well, and we're going to weather it just fine. So when we look at it that way, that's what's different. So like we were conservative on the outset, we were innovative and stepped outside of the Portland area echo chamber. We looked at where things were working across the country in a little bit different areas. We replicated our model here, and now we're potentially building a multi-acreage inspirational recovery campus. That's going to be the hub of our entire system. We just did it differently than Multnomah County still refuses to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, just to be the optimistic, because there are a lot of issues here that we're trying to systematically break through the barriers. But I really do want to appreciate the county commissioners in all 3 counties.
Yeah, I was going to say, shout out the new Multnomah County commissioners, because they're doing much better than previous.
We've got 4 Multnomah County commissioners. We have 4 Washington County commissioners that are completely there to support this reform effort. And we have the Clackamas County Commission.
Yeah.
So I just
Fisify, Pam Trees, Chair Harrington, Commissioner Willie Snyder in Washington County.
They're all committed to making this better. We just had to kind of break through the initial politics of the creation of this measure, and that was trust the counties; they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it does seem.
And then it turned
right,
and everybody said it's not working.
Yeah,
in some counties,
right. The reflection piece seems
and
real.
That was the call for reform, we wanted to jump on that because that is what we do best, is just ask people to come to the table and solve their own problems. That it sounds very simplistic, but the Metro's been doing this now for 40 plus years. And it's what I was taught when I worked there 25 years ago, is how do you bring people to the table? And this is why I'm so worried about just how do we course correct in the region and the state so that people see success when they do negotiate and they do compromise. Mm-hmm. Because all or nothing means we get nothing. And if everybody's okay with nothing or failure, then I question why I'm in the state.
Yeah.
President Peterson, are you going to set metrics for Multnomah County?
We're going to set metrics for all 3 counties.
For all 3,
Yeah. And what is great is...
But are you going to consider them all separately? Because, if it's just for the region, they can ride on somebody else's coattails.
Yes, they each have their own plans, and they will each have to meet these metrics separately.
What are they?
Well,
they're being worked out right now.
They're being worked
Literally,
out right now.
Like it's.
But you see why this is scary for people because it was passed in 2020. Yeah. Okay, it's a ton of money. So just as a business owner, we're 5 years in. We're talking about a 10-year deal. By the end of the 10 years, we were supposed to be done, and we're just now figuring out programs and accountability.
So when this measure was created, there were only 3 metrics that the counties provided us very specific data for a dashboard. How many beds? How many eviction preventions, and how many people were removed off the street. Okay. That's it. I have a lot of questions just on the first one.
Yeah.
How long does it take for somebody to get into shelter? We don't know. What is the utilization of those beds? I think there's numbers. We don't get those.
Yep.
Not yet. We're going to get those numbers. How long does somebody actually stay in shelter? When they leave, where are they going? Are they successful or are they going back out on the street? What does success look like? We don't have that information to be able to tell you, and that is very disappointing to somebody who literally knows every bolt in Washington State on every bridge.
Yeah.
Because we're collecting data to that level of detail so that when something broke on one bridge, the media was about to say, how many more bridges are like this? How many bolts are like that? And how many other bridges are going to fail? We could answer that question. I want to get us to that spot where we have almost too much data. And I think that's part of like the culture we need to get through is that data is not bad.
Right.
Data supports or challenges your theories and allows you to move forward in a learning environment. We need to create a learning culture. And it can't just be based on the experience of one individual and how they succeeded or how they failed. It has to really be a collective, what's the most effective thing that we can do? Because we can't serve everybody uniquely.
That's right.
You can't.
Anecdotal, is that kind of what it can't be just a little
it can't be anecdotal.
Well,
and,
I don't know if...
And we also have to recognize that collecting the data and the resources to doing that actually serves the people that we're serving better than saying, oh, I need all that money for the client and not for data collection.
Right. It's not just
it's a waste of time.
Self-serving for a department.
Yeah, and I think the providers recognize that. They're collecting data so that they can do better, but it's not getting out.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't know if all of you would agree with this, but one thing that really frustrates me is I hear in public meetings and stuff a lot of talk about data, but like what you were just, there's not a lot of actual data there.
No,
and for something this hugely important, it's just like what.
And what they will
how
say,
can we not have this data?
Part of it is that it's not clean.
What do you mean by that?
So the 3 counties have been using different definitions of the same thing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So if we try to compare,
it's not
it's not
flush.
It's not
do they
comparable.
get to do that?
And then on top of that,
it's what they provided. So yes, they did get to do that.
But I mean, you're in control of the money. I mean, I'm saying a royal you. I know you're not part of Metro.
We're gonna get to one definition. We're going to have to get to
We have to get to one shared definition.
I mean, I think it's just frustrating, because it should have been done 5 years ago. It's very hard to hear that we're just now doing definitions and figuring things like that out. And so, I mean, it is what it is and it's in place and the money is whooshed out the door. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, as long as it happens.
The work that we're doing now, I asked that we do it before it went to the ballot. And I said it would take 18 months. And we were told, sorry. We're going.
Special interest groups demanded it. They threw political weight around, and it was their idea. And the ballot measure, maybe well-intentioned, was quite flawed. That's why the majority of Clackamas County said no to it.
This is the story of the state of Oregon.
And it was in Clackamas County, Washington County almost said no to it. They didn't. It was close. And then Multnomah County overwhelmingly did support it.
Which is so tricky because you've done very interesting things, I think, in Clackamas County with the money. I think Washington County has done interesting things with the money.
They have.
And so it's so hard to share that playpen with somebody else who's, doing some interesting things, it sounds like, with the shelter piece.
We have to figure out how to do an effective timeout. And then we have to be honest to the voters.
Yeah.
She's a playpen. I thought you're right.
Yeah.
But we have to be honest with the voters and just say, hey, we're too slow. Here's the mistakes we made. Here's the thoughtful
I think you're right.
2-year process that we've been engaging in.
Yep.
Here's all the engagement. Here's all the pivots we're making. Here's all the accountability being sprinkled into this and woven into this entire thing.
Right.
And then we have to say it's all hands on deck and there's no more excuses. And we have to have that tone with the voters, or the voters have every reason to tell us to fly a kite.
Because we can go through all of this reform and start to try and build trust.
Yep.
But all it takes is one misstep.
Mm-hmm.
And we're back at square one.
One more Jessica Vega Peterson press conference would
not. Yeah, and it's difficult for people like you all. It's difficult for people like you all, Ben, because does the SHS money flow into a general pot and then it's administered to each county?
It comes into Metro, and 3 days later, it goes out to the counties.
But
which is part of the issue.
As a Multnomah County resident, my money doesn't go specifically to Multnomah County; it's dispersed.
No.
Your allocation is to the population, so we get a smaller allocation.
Your constituents are going to be screaming if Multnomah County is not held accountable.
Well, they're going to be
because
screaming
their money goes there.
Go ahead.
Although mathematically based, and we have done as much as we can to make sure that what's raised in each county stays in each county.
Okay.
And I say mathematically
Proportional
based
and-
because
yes, yeah.
you're getting taxed as an individual, right? If you're making over 150,000 right now,
It's
you're
so
getting
much more of a
taxed.
kick in the teeth to us.
Yeah, you're
living
getting
in Multnomah
taxed as an
County.
individual
Right.
and you're getting taxed as a business. So sometimes
Yes,
those are
that's
two
right.
different places.
People don't realize we get
So-
taxed twice, especially if you have like
Right.
If
an
you just
S
wrote
corp.
that check, you should be furious.
You know where I
because
write it
you're-
to? SHS tax. That's where I write it to.
But you-
And I write another one called preschool tax.
Right. So you should be furious because
Big ones.
you know proportionally your dollars that you just wrote going right back into
That's right.
Multnomah County.
Yeah.
The
they are.
taxpayers in Clackamas County voted against this and they don't love it, but I hope they know those dollars
What you're
proportionally are
doing
coming
with
back to
it.
a competent local
Yep.
government that's having good
Yeah.
outcomes
And so that's going
and
to be
doing the
your
job they had tasked us to do.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your
and so
difficult lift.
and so that's the
And
It's
I'm
tricky.
very,
it's the tricky part. Yeah.
and I think part of what we get pushed on is the vast majority of this problem lies in Multnomah County. And we all acknowledge that and we all agree with
Yeah.
that. The point of having a regional system is so that it's not centralized all in
Yeah.
Multnomah County anymore. So there is a big push out there to start a reallocation and have Clackamas and Washington residents, businesses feed money into Multnomah County.
Mhm.
And I have pushed back on that because if we want to centralize the problem in one spot, that's what you would do.
That's what you do.
And that would be the result, is that we would end up with all of the homeless population centered again in Portland. When in reality, they do live in Clackamas County or they are from Clackamas County.
Yeah.
They are residents of the counties.
and they should get the care and treatment in the communities in which they
Yes.
live.
yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
the right thing to do.
I mean, just like our seniors, we
Yeah.
want them
That's
to age in
right.
place. It is
Yes.
it's the least expensive option. It is the best quality of life that they can have.
Yep.
You should be in the community that
Yeah.
that you live in, and
And we already help each other's populations. We
Yeah.
share like a 10 or 12-mile border with the city of Portland.
Mhm.
If you're coming down
Right.
82nd Street and cross Duke,
It's called like
you don't, and you're
unincorporated
pushing all your belongings in a
Right.
shopping cart. You
Right.
don't know that you just crossed into Clackamas
That's
County.
right.
Oh,
But
we
if you
hear
see-
reports about that all the time
Right.
from the Washington County DA's office and the Clackamas County DA's office.
But they cross.
yeah,
Yeah.
They cross.
of course.
I mean, so
Again, that's why we regionalized
yeah,
it.
and
right?
having that regional approach where you can also, the good thing about this is that if it was centralized and all reallocated back into Portland, Multnomah County, we wouldn't be able to see those pockets of excellence in the region that are working. That
then
are
your
replicatable.
constituents would leave.
Clackamas County would lose.
You would have
know what
zero
Clackamas County
residents.
would do if we
Yes.
had to give a bunch of the taxpayers dollars from Clackamas County into Portland, which many of them just left to leave
Right. That's
that
right.
insanity,
That's
and then we poured that. It would be a thing. It would.
Yeah.
Woo, it would be
Yeah.
a thing.
It would-
Yeah.
which is something else I point out.
It would get loud. It would get really loud. Really, really loud. Yeah.
Or real quiet.
Yeah. Or right.
Real quick. Lights
Yeah.
out.
Yes, it would be bad.
So, I just in kind of summary, there are again regional problems that we have that are solved at a regional level, but it takes every single individual city, all 24 and all 3 counties, to actually have folks like Commissioner West to actually do the hard work on the ground. And that's the beauty of what we've got going on right now, is that we've gotten it to the right place. We've got it to the right players. We've got the right conversations going.
I agree with that.
And it has the opportunity to succeed. We just need to put the pedal to the metal.
What
Yeah.
is the
Right.
timeline on this? Like, when does the task force turn into action?
So the timeline to get something to the ballot for an extension is actually the end of July. So the Metro Council would have to send that out to the ballot by the end of July. Our work on the task force for reform will end of June, and then we will actually, as Metro Council, then do the reform effort in a separate ordinance and change the governance and change what we expect of that governance structure to do with the compliance that we were talking about. So that would probably start up this fall. And so we're growing a muscle right now. That's how I look at it. We're growing a regional muscle in the space, and we will be able to transfer that into this new space because everybody has started working together already where we weren't before. So I do have optimism. I do hope that people see that there has been value in this, that 7,500 people have been moved off the street,
Yeah.
that 15,000 eviction preventions is like an amazingly high number of people that could have been on our streets. We can't manage the inflow. All
Right.
we can do is manage the outflow.
That's right.
And I need to be very clear about that.
I mean, except for the preventative stuff that you were talking about, I guess.
Yeah. If we continue as a state to not invest in our economy, to not invest in this place, then that inflow continues to increase, and we will never have enough resources.
Well, that's true, because you won't have a tax base.
Yeah. So I think we need to be practical. I think we need to talk more practically. This is about managing an intense situation, an emergency situation, and be more about emergency management. We can try to get to a stabilization of this, but it's going to take more at the state level and more at the federal level to help us with the mental health beds, to help us with our economy, to get the housing built, to have jobs that pay, right? All of that's going to have to happen at the same time. So what I've been saying is we really do need in Oregon to be able to pat our heads and rub our tummies at the same time. You can't just go for the basics. You also have to go for the frickin' vision, right? We need to build shit. We need to get people in jobs that are building the I-5 bridge. We need to get people building the sports mega complex. We need the Blazers to stay.
Yeah,
we need all hands on deck
Yeah.
for the future of this region. It can't just be about this issue. And until we settle on this issue, we can't go do all of those other things.
Right.
We are literally
that's
stuck.
all the extra stuff. Yeah,
It's not
we can't
extra.
do that yet.
It is literally going to be the lifeblood of the future of this region.
Yeah, but no, what I'm saying is I agree
yeah.
with you. We can't get to that until we
That's right.
get past
So
this.
I did something that, I mean, I just thought of it, and I bet you could enlighten me on this. A couple weeks ago, and I've been critical of Governor Brown and Kotek. They're vastly different though, in their governance and ability. She was, I believe, giving
Governor Kotek?
Governor Kotek
Okay.
a speech
Yeah.
in front of the state capitol.
Yep.
I saw it on X, a post. She was talking about recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, did she like steal my speech? I was like,
didn't see that.
I was like, I have never
Again.
heard her speak like this. I've never heard anybody in her party kind of like take this tone. This was like, it just made my head snap. I was like,
Yeah.
what? And she was talking about the needs for access to treatment.
Yeah, I remember you
access
talking
care.
to me about
and
this.
I was like, do you know what I just heard the governor say?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't, it was just, it was like, and she was heartfelt and it seemed authentic. And we have never talked about this, but I know that you are in constant conversations, and it was after Jessica Vega Peterson did a surprise press conference about $100 million plus shortfall, along with general fund shortfalls, and the counties, Metro, and the governor all being like, what are we, and on her own commissioners all being like, what the hell just happened?
Right.
Like,
Well,
what is she talking about?
I believe she was famous for saying she didn't even know until that press conference happened that.
Yeah,
the
no, the
shortfall
governor
was
didn't
real.
know.
I
Her
didn't-
county
I
partners
didn't
didn't
know.
know. No other Metro didn't know. President Peterson didn't know. We were all just like,
I
It
knew
was like a
there was a
12-hour
deficit, and my response was, how are you going to make your cuts?
Yeah.
Because we are all in a deficit. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're private or public right now. We are all in deficit. We are all making cuts, right?
and then the governor had this very strong treatment recovery language.
Yeah.
And about just the
Might have
person. And I don't know. I know you're in
mentioned-
conversation.
Yeah, no, I mentioned what we've been working on, Doris.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I mean,
that's great.
I've shouted her out many times recently because she's on board with this whole civil commitment. She wants to change the laws there,
Yep.
Oregon, and I'm on board with that. And also Portland housing, I'm totally down. Like I'm like unlock every
Yep.
housing building that we can do.
The fact that the
So-
mayor just waived SDCs for the
Right.
next 5,000
Yeah.
units, that's huge. But what we also need to understand is that, again, at the state level, in other states, the states actually support their cities and their counties for economic development and growth.
Yep. That's
And
true.
the state is not set up to do that. It is
Mhm.
completely pushed onto the local jurisdictions, and then they control the taxation and the ability of the cities to actually do anything. So system development charges are, because our property tax system, well, our income tax, property tax, our entire tax system doesn't work. So cities and counties charge system development charges on new construction.
Mhm.
Those are very expensive because they're paying for the new parks, they're paying for the new roads, they're paying for a new sewer, they're paying for new water.
Tell us what system development charges are.
They're a fee on every new unit built or any new business, commercial, retail building built.
And they're high.
They're high.
Yeah.
They pay
very
for the cost
high.
that they put on the infrastructure, or they
Which
increase
means-
the infrastructure for their building.
And all I want to get across is, again, this inflow problem that we can't as a state legislature, and I think Governor Kotek is learning more and more and more about the hurdles at the local level to be able to grow. And so waiving SDCs is one way to do it, but you forego a lot in the future as a city of being able to provide another park or an upgrade to a park or a future water system upgrade, right?
It's the traditional way to gather that.
However, what that really shows is that all of our cities and all of our counties are not in fiscal good health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're depending on growth to pay for new things. And if we're depending on growth, then we can't afford these new homes. And that's where all of the cities are. They have no inspectors, they have no permitters, they have no planners to be able to grow. Mm-hmm. So every time we go, and since I've been on Metro Council, I have gone out. I've talked to all the cities at the edge. I'd like to give you an urban growth boundary expansion so we can get more homes. I'm sorry, Lynn, we can't do that. I don't have the resources to actually support the growth.
They can't facilitate that. Yeah.
They need help from the state in order to support growth, whether it's growing internally and densifying or whether it's...
That's interesting. I've actually never heard that.
Yeah.
So that you need like a state level economic development.
So the governor has heard this. She's created a small $100 million infrastructure fund. And I say it's small because if you know the state, there are 224 cities and 36 counties. So you divide that up. Mm-hmm. That's not much money for any one city or county. So $100 million sounds like a lot, but for infrastructure, I mean, I was managing those mega projects and each one of them was $7.5 billion.
Yeah.
$3.5 billion. Sorry. That's escalating. That's what the I-5 is. They were each $3.5 billion at the time. So when we're talking about infrastructure.
Yeah. And you think about I was thinking any like sports venue, that's, $500 million at least or whatever,
Right.
$100 million is going to be a small dent in that, but.
Right. I mean, if you wanted to localize it to a couple cities and get some impact, that's the only way to do it. But 224 cities that are all struggling with a homeless issue and a lack of housing. It's just the beginning of what we need is more like $2.5 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion, like in that range in order to actually get growth going.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've just never heard that idea. I was going to bring up earlier that, we talked about this with Sharon too, that all the stuff we were talking about with state level treatment and mental health services, Sharon brought up that we're one of the highest states with mental illness. I'm sure you know this too, just
absolutely
in the medical field.
Well, you are dealing with it, boots on the ground in the hospital system.
It seemed like that.
We have systematically election cycle, not election cycle also, but also legislative session after legislative session after legislative session divested from the basic infrastructure to help people get treatment that they, I believe, morally have a right to. Mm-hmm. And that's been a problem. And the chickens have definitely come home to roost on this. And Measure 110 is also a funding mechanism through marijuana dollars, right?
Cannabis.
But that money's always been there before Measure 110. It wasn't like we always knew that there has been just a non-prioritization by the state of Oregon and the legislature to prioritize these needed infrastructures and also workforce crisis. And all this is still, once we get talk about self-imposed, then we get Measure 110 and say, but it's going to fund all the treatment. Well, I think legalizing those illicit substances was not necessary to fund. And that's the big lie. The big lie was that money was always there. And we didn't prioritize it towards getting people access to care. And that's the problem, is that we have to have a paradigm shift. And we can't be 50th in the nation any longer. Right. Once we talk about Oregon values, it's not an Oregon value to allow people to live on our streets like this. It's just not. No. It's not good for people. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for community. It's not good for anything. Right. And so I do see a local shift. President Peterson did just talk about this. Like, the people in the room now are serious actors with really local leaders across both aisles trying to be honest and solve the problem. Now, there's still some voices that I may not agree with, and that's okay. That's life. But overall, I feel like that we are moving in a positive direction, being collaborative, being honest, and being allowed to do so. And so that's been and now, did it take too long? We both agree, yes. Do we wish this would have been done originally?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Do we believe that a lot of special interest groups drove this quickly and forced it on all of us? That's a fact. Did it cause Metro to expand into yet another arena that, they've never done before? Yeah, it did. And that's not easy either. So I do see little signs, though, of hope. Yeah. And I hope that, the leaders in the room now just judge us on the merit of what we've been bringing to the table so that we can have the resources necessary to finally get ahead of this problem. Clackamas County, Washington County, under President Peterson's leadership. Did I say Metro? What did I say? No.
Clackamas County,
Clackamas
Washington
County, Washington County, under Metro President's leadership with Metro. Lynn Peterson's.
I was chair of Clackamas County.
Yeah, chair of Clackamas. Yeah, under Lynn Peterson, under mine, under all the other, we've had a lot of areas of like where you can look to is like, wait a second, where can we not throw the baby out with the bathwater? Where can we pull out what's working? Where can we revamp quickly? Say we're sorry. We're fixing it now. And it took a minute to kind of get the reins with the adults in the room. The adults are now in the room, and we're working to like build that trust with the voters and show good outcomes. That's what we're trying to do now. And I think it's been very, very productive. And that's why it's been an honor to be sitting at that table, being a part of that conversation with President Peterson. And you build really lasting, meaningful relationships that are rooted in something. And that common something is we got to get people off these streets. And we got to be, and that's where we're at. So I hope that brings some hope.
Yeah.
We've been hearing, I've been hearing it from the governor's office when I heard some of her speech, how she's speaking. So.
And you've been joshing me about sounding like a Republican now.
Have I? I know.
'Cause I'm the one who wants the tax cut.
I'm like, I don't want to cut the rate. We're doing great. Leave me alone and get out of my. What do you mean? I'm like, it's so funny. People are like, but the problem is like some of these sound bites and bumper stickers start to melt away when you're literally like, okay, right now the moral crisis is how do I get this person care and stop this from happening anymore?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like if it's your loved one, if it's your daughter, if it's your son, if it's your grandchild out there running around naked in the streets without care in the cold, that's not who we are, right? And so I think at a certain point, ideology is starting to kind of melt away. Reality is starting to smack us across the face. And, it's a bitter pill to take, but here we are. And then you really start to care less about party identity when I'm like, Lynn, let's get it done. Like, how can we come together? Like, and, now we can laugh about party identity and other things that we think are so important. And so often we get tribalistic in our culture. But at the end of the day, it's not, you don't get to saber rattle at local level. We don't get to do theatrics. Yeah. We don't get to jump on a stage and do a big dance and yell, shout, and scream. We are tasked at the end of the day being frontline electeds that have to solve local problems. And this is the biggest one we face right now.
My entire goal for this has always been since the beginning for the last 2 years. That's just motivating me to like, how do we have that final press conference where behind the speakers is every single county commissioner, which would not have happened 2 years ago. Every single mayor that we can get there, which would not have happened 2 years ago because the cities feel left behind. The providers, like everybody who cares about this issue is standing there saying, we acknowledge that we have done some good, but we have to do better. And until that happens, I do not feel like we have accomplished, because until everybody agrees ownership over the problem and the solution, we can't get out of this, right? That's my motivation. I mean, the press conference is just my visual, but it's literally the ownership of the problem and the issue. And until that happens, then I have not succeeded. So that's how you can judge me.
Yeah, no, it is definitely all rowing. People, the goal should be people rowing the same direction. But I was gonna say, I think it's definitely even just you guys doing this is a testament to like what you were saying, like. Because I always say local politics is completely nonpartisan. It should be just focus on the local stuff and focus on the basics. And
that's why it is.
I'm a nonpartisan elected. At the end of the day, I'm there to represent Clackamas County, regardless of, anything else. Like I'm there to represent every Clackamas County resident. Same thing with you. President Peterson represents the entire region within Metro. And the thing is, like it's quite rewarding too. You build real friendships too, and you find. You become Oregonians first. Yeah,
we
you're Oregonians at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, and no one's going to bail us out. Like I said, no one's coming in to make we have to own up to our own problems and take responsibility for where we're at, and then we have to be honest. We have to be honest in our leadership. And so I feel like I've completely been afforded that space with President Peterson. President Peterson is my friend, and I like working with her. It's been quite collaborative and productive. And so I think we got more work to do. But I think that's at the end of the day what most Oregonians want. You know what? I think sometimes it's maybe like, I think everybody should be engaged in, we're kind of nerds. Let's be engaged in all this political and local governments. Well, a lot of people have to like take their kids to soccer practice.
Right.
They have to like put dinner on the table.
Yeah.
They have to go to work for, 8 to 10 hours a day. And they, you know what? You know your government's really not working if sometimes they don't know who Metro is, right?
Yeah.
And they just go to the zoo and they see the condors and the cool
Which is
elephant
like
exhibits.
90%
Tula
of the
Right?
They see
population.
Tula too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they see Tula too, and that's their vision of Metro, Metro's probably doing a much better, but this is now we're all, if they're having anything about, county this, and it's the homeless situation in 10 cities, and I'm glad people are being awake to engage in your local community. I'm not telling you to, but we want to just be people to feel comfortable with their local governments functioning the way they should.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's what we want.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple more things. I don't know if you want to, and then I'll get into these goofy questions. I'm sorry, guys, about this light that's going off. It's part of the
romantic.
new space.
It's haunted.
It's not one of my.
lighting.
It's not one of my lights, but yeah, it's kind of haunted. But yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that the whole kind of key takeaway for me is like this reflection piece, and I just think I do see some of that. Like I think you guys are part of that, and I think some of even like I said, the new Multnomah County commissioners are part of that. I think there is a degree of reflection happening, and that's good.
Mhm.
I don't know how comfortable I am saying how strong that is, but just that it's happening is a good thing, and I think you guys are spot on with that. And I was gonna say, yeah, I don't know, just the Oregon way to me is this kind of we're accepting all ideas no matter where they come from if they're good, like it's just so important to make progress. And
And
yeah, I don't
for
know.
a long time, that has not been the case in this conversation. that the ideas from the private sector, the ideas from the advocates, the ideas that the way you approached it, the lens that you bring. I'm starting to lose my voice with the allergies. They were not being accepted because there's
tunnel vision.
There was tunnel vision, and opening that up is really important because again, every single one of those perspectives is right because this is such a complex problem. Every single one of them was right. And we need to like embrace every single one of those solutions because they help a specific type of population. They help a specific type of issue. We needed to break out of the box.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say before?
Well, I just wanted to thank you, President Peterson, for coming on and for making yourself so accessible because I was telling Andy when we were talking about the show, I was saying, actually, I've only ever seen Lynn Peterson's headshot. Like, if I had a gun to my head, I couldn't pick her out of a crowd. And I don't know what her voice sounds like.
Yeah.
I don't. And so it's
Sounds
just
like somebody
nice.
from Wisconsin.
It's well, a little bit, but it's
Who
charming.
feels like a 6th generation Oregonian.
It's nice to have
that.
access to your local leaders. And I think people are just going to really, there just hasn't been a lot of, I think part of the reason people don't know Metro is there's not, we haven't seen anybody really, and so it's just nice that's not under cover of a press release or a couple sentences in an Oregonian article or something. And so it's just really nice that you were willing to sit down, especially for like a long form podcast. I mean, sit down for this long and chat and be accessible in this way. I don't think it's something most people are used to. And I think it's brave and really great that you did it. I mean, as a constituent, like as somebody in Metro, I think it's really nice that you did that.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and really happy to be here with Commissioner West.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say, and then I'll get into, if you have time, some funny questions if you want.
Sure.
But I was going to, because like, you talked for a few minutes about Housing First, and like this ties into the Sharon episode and the Lance episode, because if people are watching this and freaking out, like, because I've spoken out a lot against what I thought was Housing First. And, what I've learned over the past few weeks is that, there's an argument that I think there's two sides to it. And there's an argument that real Housing First requires all these services that
That's
we're
right.
talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there are people who think that it's just a house and there's no strings attached.
Yeah.
I'm not on that train,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but if it requires these services, I'm totally on board. And I think that, we just need to clarify that within Multnomah County because I think they've been doing it kind of the old way. But I just wanted to say that for any haters out there who were going to come at me for that, because like I'm on board with it if it has like services
That's right.
for people,
Because that's literally the only way to recovery.
A house is a tool.
And it's
right?
not just handing keys to somebody.
And you're looking
saying,
at the hierarchy of needs. right? And so you need to have some stability that's appropriate for that specific individual to help them get recovered.
Yeah.
But housing's a tool, right? Treatment and recovery is not just treating the individual as an individual patient that has individual needs and to help build their recovery capital again, but it also engages all the stakeholders are responsible for this. Government alone, Multnomah County, Supportive Housing Services, President Peterson, and myself, we cannot solve this problem alone. This is business. This is faith community. This is the Little League. This is teachers. This is all of us, all hands on deck saying we are fighting for our community. And recovery-oriented systems of care helps tether a person back into community in a successful way, why they can regain their individual capital so that they can once again be stable in that community. And while giving them all of the different resources and services and inputs they need to deal with what happened or what trauma that caused them to be in that place originally. It doesn't just say, here, you have a house, it's a bed success story.
Right,
that is a success story. That's not a success story. That dehumanizes that person and isolates them away. What we're doing within treatment recovery systems is saying we're building a care continuum that's balanced, that works together, that treats you as an individual. There's no wrong entry point. And we're going to help you get to your self-sufficiency so that you can be stable. And sobriety is okay. Sobriety is the goal. Recovery is absolutely possible. And just the shelter, homelessness, tent city washing machine over and over and over again is all we have to offer is not compassionate. It's not right. So it's just a totally different approach.
I asked Nick Kristof after he pulled out of the governor's race because he's written all these books about poverty and specifically one about Yamhill County and growing up in Yamhill County. And so with all of his research, I said, where in the world, like in the entire world, because he's done so many books on poverty all around the world. I said, where would you go to learn more about a system that works? And he said, oddly enough, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I looked at him like, I am heading to Oklahoma City next week. Can you get me a tour? He said, yes. So I learned two things from Tulsa. One, it's nice to have a billionaire who cares about poverty.
Yeah.
That's who funded the New Haven for Hope in San Antonio.
A Kaiser. It's a Kaiser, but not related to the Kaiser here. It's Oil Kaiser.
Yeah.
And he cared about ending poverty in Tulsa. That's all he cared about, like just very specifically. So his question was, what was the number one factor that was contributing to poverty in Tulsa? And it turns out that Oklahoma has the highest incarceration rates of women in the entire country. So they created a diversion program for women out of prison. And once you're in the program, you're in there for life, whether you fail out and have to go back and come back out. But it's wraparound services. And the whole point is to get you reunited with your family and get you a job, get you stabilized, right? So it was wraparound services. It was a place to live that you got graduated, permanent to temporary, or temporary to permanent to, graduation. Totally what we're talking about, wraparound services. And then they took me to a low-income daycare nonprofit that they had brought in. The minute you're in the daycare as a family, you're in as a family, and now you have wraparound services.
And that's what it should be, to end generational poverty.
Yes. And then workforce development, there was a separate program that came in as a pilot program from some think tank in New York City. They set up this workforce development program. Once you're entered into that program for whatever welding or computer programming or whatever it is that you're entered in, wraparound services.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is how life should be.
You're not just you don't just get slotted into a job and then we're going to take off, because if you get fired, if something happens, we're here to help you.
Yeah. This would stop the inflow. This is a preventative measure as well into homelessness. So the housing first model, if there's wraparound services, is working. If
that ties into your interest in bringing businesses here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And bringing people with resources here.
And then it points back up to the state for workforce development, which you were saying, which is not just having community college classes, is having the wraparound services. It's the fact that we don't have enough daycare in this region. And there's nobody in the country, and nobody's working on it. And if we bring it in, we should bring it in with wraparound services. Somebody should be working on that. Everybody should be working on it, but nobody's working on it, right?
Yeah.
So these are the things that would build a solid foundation for all of Oregonians, not just for low income and homeless.
Yep.
We are not building that foundation. We are not building that solid foundation. And that's what I think the state needs to get in line with, of like, what does it take?
Yeah.
So that we're not dealing with this problem on the other end.
And I think on top of that, why don't people want to have families in Oregon? Why don't couples want to have children? Right? Why
Education.
like a lot of it's the education system is all tied to the stuff you were just talking about,
Yep.
President
Mhm.
Peterson. Yeah, but we need to create an environment that we really feel like is pro-family. It's
Yeah.
pro-kid. It's it's pro-community. It's
Yeah.
pro taking care of your neighbor. It's pro like watching out for the neighbor across the street. Maybe she's elderly and isn't able to mow her lawn, but that's your neighborhood too, and you're going to go mow her lawn because we take care of each other, right?
Mhm.
It's this
The true
mentality
community.
about personal
Yeah.
responsibility within your community to take care of one another, and to engage in that way. And we become so isolated from one another. We have so many policies in Oregon that make it it does not promote the rearing and siring of children in strong family units. In so many different areas. And so it's taking these like community focused interventions that President Peterson just said, and also figuring out how to like bring that support so that people feel like that they can grow their own families. And I think that's strong. That's the base of a strong civil society. And I think that we could hopefully we can do better here.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there's a lot in there too. There's so much I could say about, like the antisocial that was kind of created post-pandemic, and it
Yeah.
just feeds into a
Yeah.
lot of what you were saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me get into some of these. We'll do, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes here. I'm just curious because you said you're from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite? What's like the cheese game?
Oh my God.
Like,
Oh,
tell me the best
I'm going to get in
cheese.
trouble if I talk. Okay.
What's the best cheese from?
Can you do it in
from
an
Oregon?
accent?
What's your
from-
favorite and what's the best from Wisconsin? I don't know. Just tell me some of the best.
Wow.
We did an episode back where my favorite cheeses are very boring. I go Munster, provolone, Colby Jack,
Yeah,
mozzarella,
Wow.
and I'm
I
fine. I'm
love-
fine
I do
with being
love
that
Colby
plain.
I
Jack.
love
Yeah.
Gouda. I love smoked Gouda. I love a smoky pizza with smoked Gouda,
Smoky
smoked
pizza.
bacon, smoked onions. Like that would be awesome.
Is that is smoking things? I mean, not in that sense.
Well,
but
yeah,
like,
there's a lot of.
It is Oregon.
There's a lot of. Well, in Wisconsin,
We do have a
too.
pro-drug culture here.
I mean, it's
I mean-
more about beer and
Yeah.
old fashions
Sure, okay.
in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Okay.
No, farmer's cheese. I can't get farmer's cheese out here.
how do you qualify?
It's a
what
white
is-
cheese. It's like a soft
Okay.
cheese. It's like Swiss but soft.
Is that what they make cheese curds from? Because I used to get
No, cheese curds come off of all of the different types of cheeses,
Okay.
basically, because it's what comes up.
just extra.
It's it's extra.
Okay.
That's the
Weirdly, we've been able to market
Yeah,
that. And,
yeah.
I mean, and good for them.
They're squeaky.
I
Yeah.
love cheese curds. Are great,
I mean,
yeah.
in Wisconsin, there's so many farms and so many cheese making. But Bascom, University of Wisconsin-Madison, has its own cheese making and ice cream making.
Wow.
So that's where we would get a lot of our stuff from.
At the university.
At the university.
Wow, yeah.
The university is 50,000 students, probably plus or minus 5,000. I'm not sure where they're at now, but with enrollment dipping. But it's a huge land grant university, very obviously agricultural focused to begin with. But I think when I came here to Portland State University, somewhere like the research department at Portland State was like 15 million. And I think at Madison, it was like 250 million at that time. That was in 1998.
Wow.
So you can imagine the amount of dollars flowing into the research in that university because success begets success, right? You get a lot of industry that then wants to have their research done in Madison, specifically like the beer companies.
Mm-hmm.
Shocker.
Shocker. And that's where my father-in-law worked, researching
I mean, it's a big
different
industry.
beers.
Yeah, it's a huge industry.
and the production of barley malt oats.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
But,
figured about that.
Yeah, it's
No, it's great. Yeah. What's your favorite cheese? Tell me something real quick.
Ooh.
I gotta look something up. So tell me your favorite cheese.
smoked
I guess
Gouda.
I probably just say Tillamook because I'm an Oregonian.
Yeah, but that's
But
like
what
what
kind?
kind?
Yeah.
I know, but that's my brand. I have
Okay.
a brand favorite.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
See, I can only eat their extra sharp
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
love
because
good.
their
their
extra sharp is like medium in
I
Wisconsin.
feel like
Mhm.
I mean I love cheese, so like I'm not super picky here. Even stinky cheese that smells like dirty feet. Like I'm fine with that.
I mean,
Because
that's
I
how it's
also
supposed
what
to be,
I
right?
did the peaty scotch, right? We did
Right, yeah,
peaty
which
scotch
is good.
on
It's
your
good.
yeah. It tasted like the undercarriage of a Scotsman, but
Smoky,
who's complaining?
smoky undercarriage. Yeah.
I kind of like if I just kind of like Swiss cheese, ham and Swiss.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
but I'm not. I'm a big cheese fan. Yeah, I'm glad that and yeah, and
And
ice cream.
This is totally random. I'm putting you on the spot here. Have you ever been to the Mustard Museum in Middleton?
Yes, I have.
Oh my God, you have?
That's a
Yes,
thing.
I have been
It
dreaming.
sounds
Kind of
it's
fun.
actually not. It's,
You have a
it's
mustard
in Mount,
museum?
Yeah, it's in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is not totally accurate.
Well, that might be.
I've
it
been
might
wanting
be-
to go for years because I'm like
Really?
mustard's
Really?
my
Did
condiment.
Did they move? They might have moved.
I don't know.
Yellow mustard?
Yeah.
And
You
it's
never
all
do
mustard. It's all mustards. It's a
No, I
yes.
didn't. How did I not?
Because I had a
know
whole
that?
phase of my life. I still do it sometimes where I eat biscuits and mustard just as a snack.
I do know
or-
that.
yeah. But I love mustard. My favorite condiment.
Did you, when we went out for burgers, I don't have a specific memory. Did you use mustard for your French fries?
Sometimes I'll do that. Yeah.
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 Because I have the
You're not
controversy.
completely loyal
I have
to
the
it.
controversial thing of I will go ketchup-less because I just do not like ketchup. I'll just
Yeah.
eat the fries plain. But
I'm now mayo.
I
okay,
love
mayo's
mayo.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
I'll do a quick rapid fire. My
Yay, dairy.
usual ones. Do you like crunchy or smooth peanut butter, or maybe you don't like peanut butter?
Oh no, I love peanut butter. Crunchy.
Okay. Hell, yeah, I'm getting more people on my team.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oil, no
What about
oil.
you?
Don't care, but if I had to pick crunchy,
Okay.
Do you like
You're
peanut butter?
outnumbered in this
yeah,
one.
totally.
What
Who
about
doesn't like peanut
oil?
butter?
How do you all
Oil?
feel about oil?
Oil
Like-
what?
like olive oil?
natural.
Well, when you get the
natural.
peanut
The
butter.
stir
I
kind.
don't like the stir kind.
I don't
I
either.
get the kind that's natural but already
Agreed.
mixed. Yes.
That's what I
Yeah,
do, yeah.
don't
Because
have
otherwise
a
it just-
problem.
It just overflows and it's a mess.
Oh my gosh, I've heard that somewhere
I-
before.
I have a Paul Rummel who takes care of that for me.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And this is my point as well as I have a Mark
Who doesn't take care?
who totally takes
Yeah.
care of me.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm reduced to is like,
Yeah.
that's my issue is
I'm
oil and the
spoiled.
peanut butter.
I have the best spouse ever. I wake up almost every single morning and there's either a breakfast burrito or breakfast sandwich with coffee waiting for me as I
That is
walk
pretty
out the door.
badass.
Like
yeah.
he gets up earlier than me because he works because the company he works for is in a different time zone, but almost always like without fail like he's
Awkward.
making sure I'm taken care of, and it's so sweet. And his
Yeah.
brunches are off the hook.
Wow.
They're legendary.
What's your? I just thought of this, but what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite breakfast item? I'm very anti French toast for some reason. I don't like French toast.
What?
How?
What if it's like thick hollow bread French
God,
toast?
that's
So
how I make
I know
So
people
I'm
are always like-
I'm gluten intolerant and I was diagnosed in Milwaukee
Okay.
when I was 18 months
So-
old. So
Oh my
I've
goodness.
never, yeah.
How?
No, my husband's a huge French toast fan.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that he really makes for himself that's not gluten free.
But what do you?
Yeah.
Is there?
I
So
love
do you have
breakfast
a
so
breakfast
much.
go-to thing?
I
I
say
love
quiche.
If I had a
breakfast.
Paul, I'd love
Quiche.
breakfast.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quiche Lorraine to be very specific because it has
I
good
get
cheese
crepes.
Okay.
I love grapes.
I'll get like homemade crepes, homemade waffles. I'll get
Homemade
huevos rancheros.
grapes?
That's my favorite.
Grapes.
Wait,
Oh, I
that's-
thought you said
Great.
grapes.
Yeah.
You're all talking
I
all
get. I
breakfast.
mean, he'll do like a sponge fruit truffle. I'll wake up and they'll be like, I got up at 4 and made homemade cinnamon rolls that are like gooey and delicious. And the neighbors are coming over. Kids just knock on the door, and the neighbor is like, "Do you have any cinnamon rolls?"
they can
Yes,
smell it.
it's
coming
the
in.
best. Like the neighbors are like, they'll be like, "Hey, it's Sunday, Paul. You gonna make brunch for the whole block?" So it's like
That's pretty
I'm
awesome,
super
though, yeah.
spoiled. Like our son Jaquan now lives in Texas right now. And he called the other day. He's like, I just miss Papa's crepes so much. He calls
I'm
Paul
sure.
Papa. He calls me Dad. He's
Yeah.
like, I just miss Papa's crepes
That's
so
so
much. Yeah.
Whereas my husband makes all of that, but then eats it all.
Well, he has to.
He
Well,
doesn't share.
He's a cyclist, and that's all he does is cycling and
Carb,
Okay.
carb,
But also,
carbs,
if it's
yeah.
all gluten stuff,
all the gluten
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
It's a good thing you're from Wisconsin with all that cheese. You know, you
Well,
can
and this
do
is the weird thing is I didn't start-
ketogenic diet
I
like
didn't start
nobody's
drinking
business.
until I was 38 because I only thought there was beer,
Yeah, right,
and
Oh,
I
I see,
can't
I
have
see.
beer.
right.
I literally that's what I thought.
Wow.
Yeah, well,
Well,
yes.
everybody just brings beer, so
And
if
this
that's
is a
it.
beer-oriented place.
Is
On
it?
the
Yeah.
Pacific
And
Northwest
there was
is,
not like
too.
wine.
Right, right.
I mean, they have like strawberry wine and
Mm.
cranberry wine.
Oh my God, that really reminds me of. Do you watch Schitt's Creek?
Yes, I
Oh
love
my
that.
God, the fruit wines, and they're just getting
Yes.
trashed on the
Yes.
fruit
My
wine.
favorite show.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we've watched it like 5 times all the way through. I love it so much. It's like our favorite.
It's
Yeah,
great.
Yes,
Schitt's
I
Creek.
love
Yeah.
Schitt's Creek.
All right, I'll just do one more. Do you guys want to shout out a restaurant or a good business, a local
Oh.
business that you had a good time
Oh.
at recently?
That's easy for me.
Hold on, give me a second.
You know what I'm going to go
Are
for.
we doing restaurants?
Sure, yeah.
What is it? I'm dying to know now.
Anything in the line of restaurants from Mayor Buck.
That's Babacahin and Lake Oswego's no joke. It's
Babacahin.
really
Okay.
good.
I agree. It's
Baba
delicious.
Mayor
Cahin.
Buck is
Goo Banks. He's
Yes.
third generation to run Goo Banks.
yeah,
And then Lola's in downtown.
I've never been to any of
So
those. So.
and he's opening
I'll
up a location of a new restaurant at the airport.
That's right.
Oh.
He's one of the new
okay.
vendors at
Great.
the airport.
In the new terminal.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor Joe Buck. If you're watching,
We're taking
we
off his
are
electric.
big fans
His
of
elected
your
hat.
culinary.
He's mayor of.
Lake Oswego.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 He's working with us also on all this
Yep.
SHS that we talk about. Okay,
Oh,
I
that's
got to
great.
do. I'm going to totally like agree with that. So
Okay.
I'm giving
Yes,
Mayor
Of
Buck a
course, you
shout out.
have to. It's your
However,
city.
we're going to keep it in Clackamas County.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah.
you know what?
Oh.
You know what? I'm going to cross the river. We're going into
Yes.
Aurora. There's a restaurant called Filbert's House, and it's beautiful. It's in Aurora.
Yes.
It looks like it's very much a rustic farm,
Mhm.
English kind of cottage farmhouse.
Hmm.
You walk in, you very much feel like that you just walked into that type of setting in the United Kingdom. And it's beautiful. It's got really good food. They carry great line of whiskey. If you're into bourbon or whiskey. It's great for family dinners and birthdays and things like that. So a shout out that's a little unusual is Filbert's.
I know where it is. It's
Filbert?
across from the vintage
Yeah.
hardware store.
Yes, it's just down from
Yeah.
all the cool antique shops.
Been there, done that.
It's a
Yep.
great, huh?
Yes,
it's like
it's
a great
awesome.
little
Yep.
country. You can sit on a big, huge white porch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
it's like almost
and,
like a
and see kind of the rolling
English
green hills,
countryside.
English
Yeah.
countryside. I feel almost like it's and getting like Downton Abbey vibes a
Okay,
little bit.
okay.
So it's where you go. It's the cabin that after you go on the fox hunt with the horses. I don't know what they call
Right.
that. I'm like from North Portland. I don't know what they call that.
You do hunt though.
Yeah, I do hunt.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But not with horses and foxhounds and
True. True.
and,
I think
Very little.
and top hats and yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my go-to here, though, in Portland, because working across the river near the convention center is Olympic Provision.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's great. Yeah,
I just went there with Mayor Wilson and it was delicious. Great.
Yep.
It is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially because they have patio, right? I remember
Ooh,
that.
Smith
Yeah.
Tea.
Smith Tea.
Local Smith Tea.
Yeah.
Lord
Mhm.
Boardmont number 53 or 55.
Oh,
Sorry.
my goodness.
Are
It's
they
like
over
my
like near
favorite
Sandy?
tea. It
Or you're
is.
just saying just to
Well,
buy
they
the
have
tea.
their main location over there by Olympic
Yeah,
Provisions
yeah. Mhm.
over
in the
What
East
is
Side
that, same
Industrial.
area?
East Side
Okay.
Industrial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
down by Lippman's.
So good.
Shout out to
Yeah.
Lippman's party supplies.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I've used it many times. I've used Lippman's many times.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Two daughters.
Well, yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. Is there anything else anybody wants to say before we wrap it up here?
I would just
Thank you
and
both.
Thank you. And on a positive note, just look ahead to the future. What's going on in Clackamas County that we should be excited about?
The recovery campus is a big, huge deal that we're doing. And I think it will benefit the entire region. Clackamas County is the 8th safest county by Oregon Police State data in the entire, out of all 36, and we are the safest of all the large counties.
And your courthouse just
Our
opened.
courthouse just opened.
Mhm.
It's a $313 million investment, all while like being safe, livable, recovery systems for people to not have to subsist on the streets, to making sure that we have the infrastructure so we can do justice moving forward in our county. We are businesses are moving to the county. We are open for business. We have, I believe, out of all the top 10 fastest growing cities in Oregon, 6 of them are in Clackamas.
Mm.
The fastest growing people want to live there because we create a certain culture that fosters livability, safety, infrastructure, and those things. And it's just evidence that local government does matter. So that's my I could go on about Clackamas. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But we have big things going on. And by the way, we are the only county in our general fund right now that is in the black. So
Wow, that is
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah.
as we go into
Yeah.
budget season next week.
And we're taking a lesson learned for the future on the private-public partnership that you did for
P3 model.
the P3,
Called the P3
model.
model. We're the first one in Oregon to do it.
Yep. And
Are you guys doing
no, you're not. No,
We're not?
no.
They lied to me.
Light rail to the airport was with Bechtel.
Oh,
and it was a private-public partnership. But
are you
we're the
guys
first
doing?
county.
Are you
We're
guys
the
doing
first
it in
county.
Metro? Or are you guys?
We're looking at using it for taking Expo from a trade show.
Ooh, Expo has
hot tub gun show to an actual sports mega complex.
Yeah.
There's only two on the
That would
west.
be great.
There's
That
only
would be
two on the West
amazing.
Coast. There's the podium in Spokane, and I can't remember what the one is called in Sacramento. But we're trying to keep families here home.
Yeah.
And it'll have probably two sheets of ice because there's not enough sheets of
Wow,
ice in the.
that's
For
exactly
skating.
right.
Ice
Yep,
skating
because
rink.
right now
Yeah.
there's two and they're 24/7.
Yeah. My niece has a figure skate in Vancouver, Washington.
And
Yeah,
and
we
then
have to drive out to Beaverton.
and then a lot more court time, right, for volleyball
Yeah.
and basketball, and then what I'm calling the
It's a
lifestyle
great location.
a
for that.
lifestyle center
is.
next to it. So
Great.
essentially a hotel for visiting, right? So when you have the tournaments for visiting families and restaurants and retail, so that we would all be on site at the expo. That's the big vision, but we can't do it without a public-private partnership. So
You see what local government does?
Yeah.
When
Yes,
we're
it's
working,
exciting.
When
Yes.
we're working, it's fun
but
stuff.
I can't spend my time on that until we deal with this.
Right,
but
right.
that's one of the big things that
Yeah, I'm glad you
we're
brought that-
excited about.
Because I forgot about that until you mentioned that. And I think I'll put photos up because aren't there like renderings and stuff? I remember
Yes,
seeing
yeah,
stuff.
they're
Yeah, I'll put
renderings.
some photos up.
Yeah, we're not at the design phase yet.
Right.
We need to get a partner on board, and we need to hire somebody to actually be like an owner's rep for us
Yeah.
on this because we don't have a vast experience in the staff just because we have not done it, and so we're
Right.
getting up to speed on that. But this is the beauty of like the next iteration of Oregon because we have been through this before. We have had people leaving the state in the 80s, and we reinvented ourselves.
Yeah.
And
I know
that's
Dan Ryan talks about that. Actually.
and I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
we can do this again. It is not something that we don't know how to do. So that's my optimism is
Love it.
we got to finalize this. We got to get it on the right track. We got to sit on it
Yeah.
to make sure it stays on the right track. But then we got to start working on the actual future of this region because so many of our kids are depending on it.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming today. There's a lot in there, and you guys are always welcome back, of course. I'd love to have you back to talk about your book because I know
Oh,
I want to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like transportation. It's interesting to me, but yeah. But yeah, thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.